that they're braking about 50 yards deeper into turn number 1 now, Michael. It's not that washboard we had last year with the light USF 2000 cars bouncing forward and backwards, kind of porpoising down into one. Aggressive there. You talk to the drivers, and they give you that, that demonstration of what it's like, and it's coming down in there.
I've never heard the description porpoising, but I like that. It's just up and down.
There you go.
I like it. Very well played,
Listen,
sir.
I do what I can just to add a little bit to your vocabulary every time we come to this race.
It's the visuals that really help more than anything
You
else.
did mention earlier today that they have a slap shot contest here, and I will admit to you, as a Canadian...
Did you do it?
No.
Okay.
I was a goalie.
Of course you were.
I played net, so I don't have much of a slap shot. Let's put it that way.
Are you good on the ice? How are you with the blades?
I'm pretty solid.
So why would you play goalie?
I love it because I was on the ice the entire time. I didn't want to ever get off. I wanted to be part of the entire game, and I enjoyed it. I played a lot of net. I played a lot when I was young, through my high school years. Played in college a little bit, and just intramural. But I had a lot of fun with it, man. I just
hence
I
why
really
you
loved
only
it.
have a few teeth remaining. It's very well played. No,
yeah,
no, that's not
I
true at all.
pulling the Jacques Plante, having my no. It was we had a lot of fun. I love playing hockey, and of course, you start living life and getting on the road with what we do, and
you wouldn't be a proud Canadian if you didn't enjoy hockey, correct?
Very true. I'm a diehard Maple Leafs fan. I'll tell you that right now.
Lucas Cole is currently sitting at the exit of turn number 7. The MR safety crew out there trying to retrieve that machine, get him back to pit lane so we can continue qualifying. The one thing that this does do is really limits the amount of time that these cars will have to qualify. Actually, as Rob had said, we were only on our first couple of laps, so drivers just getting those Cooper tires up to temp and starting to get those laps, thinking about laying down some good laps. And it's taken a heck of a lot longer to get this Lucas Cole machine off the track than I had anticipated. Right now, rolling into the 7th minute of this qualifying session, which will only leave by the time we get to green, as they have him. Oh, they have him on the hook, so there is damage to that car.
That's what I wanted to point out, Michael. I thought that he had just spun and potentially everything was fine, but obviously coming around, just a light contact, I think, probably with the left rear as he looped that car around. I thought maybe just refire him and away we go, but no, indeed contact for Lucas Cole. I'll tell you, this is qualifying for race number 1. Yeah. This is huge for a guy that is actually in the top 10 in points right now. Lucas Cole, the Brazilian for Pabst Racing. That car coming in on the hook, as they said.
Yeah, you can see there's some damage to that left rear.
Yep. So you probably just broke one of either the control arm or whatever it may be.
Toe link on there or something.
Won't be able to fix that either. That's the thing. That's a tough deal for Lucas Cole. And again, broken left rear suspension contact, a spin coming out of turn number 7. But I hate to try to point out the positive for the race fans. Of course, it's horrible for Lucas Cole, but the positive for the race fans, one of the faster drivers in the grid is going to start at the back of the pack. So he'll start 19th, and we'll look forward to seeing Lucas Cole try to work his way forward in the race on Saturday.
So roughly 12 minutes will be remaining in this qualifying session. We lost about 5 there. Who does this benefit, in your opinion, more so than anybody else?
It's a really good question. I think it benefits the guys that were really comfortable with their cars this morning, the guys that didn't have to make any major changes. If there was guys saying, hey, you know what, we got to throw something at it, he hasn't got enough time to come in and make that second change, right? Because they're obviously going to go out on the racetrack for the first session, come back in, make a minor adjustment, and head back out. Obviously, it also plays for the veteran drivers who were here last year, who had a full weekend of racing. So you got to put guys like Kalen Frederick that were here last year, Calvin Ming, Jose Sierra made his debut here last year, Corey Enders was here last year, Darren Keene, the guys already at the kind of the front of the grid are guys I expect to be good. A guy like Igor Fraga, who was third and really is happy with his race car, maybe not so much because he's not going to get the time he needs on the racetrack.
What about Kyle Kirkwood?
Well, Kirkwood's brand new, but the one thing about Kirkwood, remember this car was here last year. His teammate Oliver Askew dialed the thing in. That's the thing about Cape Motorsports against whatever other teams, especially newer teams, they roll off the trailer with a setup that's fantastic. And over the last 7 years where they've won championships, the first 6 championships of USF 2000 were with the older Van Diemen car that they had been running for 20-something years. That they didn't come in and throw a bunch of stuff at it. They knew what the baseline was, and they would make minor tweaks on a race weekend. Not a team that's brand new and says, well, we went the wrong way here. And you hear it from some of the Verizon IndyCar Series drivers when you throw the kitchen sink at it. When you just do whatever you can, you throw it, just try something different. They don't have to do that. Kyle Kirkwood's going to get in a car that is going to be good and it's going to be fast.
Well, we will see some quick laps next time around. Kyle Kirkwood leads the swarm of angry hornets down into turn number 1, now through turn number 2. Kirkwood already on the back straightaway, working down Thunder Alley into turn number 3.
Well, the drivers who showed so well early. Kyle Kirkwood, of course, threw a lap down. Calvin Ming was second earlier today. Igor Fraga was third. Those are the drivers we're going to watch out for. Jose Sierra second as well.
The time we'll keep an eye on, minute 12:21. That is the track record set by Oliver Askew last year.
Watch them roll around here and start dropping some times down. You know that Kirkwood's going to be good out of the box. Let's get those first laps in. Max Peichel didn't turn a lap early either. I wonder if I didn't get a chance to see if Max is on the racetrack. I'll try to keep an eye out for him here. But drivers now, you can see them working through turn number 8, this tough corner, out of turn 8 into this 9, 10, 11 complex by the Cooper Tire banners that pit in. It's a left-hander. They come back through this off-camber right-hander, back into left-hander again, coming out to 11 and onto the front straightaway. First lap's finally going in the books. Rasmus Lind, the Swede, and number 23 for Pabst Racing, quick out of the box. But again, long way to go. They'll just start getting things dialed in.
Boy, Rasmus Lind is right behind Kalen Frederick, literally in the rear wing. So getting a nice tow down that back straightaway as they start to work their way through that final portion of that back straightaway into Thunder Alley in turn 3.
Kyle Kirkwood there coming through turn number 3, transitioning from the pavement over to the concrete. And indeed, those are the Pabst drivers coming. There's Kalen Frederick. That's Rasmus Lind. Driver to the wall. Somebody's touched the wall. That's the number 91 of Igor Fraga.
Wow.
Fraga hammered the wall.
Right there at the exit of turn number 11. You
right
see
rear.
You see the Honda banners. Took up 2 of those concrete barricades.
Hey, he had gone to P1 right there, 113.345. He's got to get off the racetrack like Rinus VK did because he doesn't want to cause a red flag.
Where is he right now?
Here he is there.
Yep,
he's off.
Runoff, so good call.
So Igor Fraga's got to stay in at a 113.3. That's not what he needed. Igor pushing hard, past the wall, coming out of turn number 11. Michael, we saw it with Rinus VK. It's easy to do. You're pushing hard. You're hanging it out there. You just lose that rear a bit. Boom. So right rear suspension damage for the Brazilian Igor Fraga in the exclusive Autosports number 91. He is P2. I want to see where this shakes out.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. The difference between Rinus VK, that happened at the end of the session. For Igor, though, we still have 8 minutes remaining, so there's lots of time to lay down. I would imagine we'll see 112s easily. That might put Fraga down to the middle, maybe 13th or 14th.
You know what? I'm going to make a call. I'm going to say 6th position. He'll be in the top 6 still. I think he's that much faster. He laid down a really good lap. I don't think he'll fall outside the top 10. That's just my call.
That's true. That's a 13-2, and everybody else is in the mid-14s right now, the people outside the top 8.
Pretty impressive run. Kyle Kirkwood does go to P1, though, 113.277, 600ths of a second off. Did Fraga lay the lap down that he needed to lay down to hold on to a front row start? No, he does not. He now goes to 3rd. He now goes to 4th. Still 4th. Rasmus Lind up into P1. Kyle Kirkwood in 2nd. Rasmus Lind, the young rookie out of Sweden, 113.050. Fraga now to 5th position. Keith Donegan able to get by the number 28. A 113.330 for Donegan. He's just under 0.3 of a second off of Rasmus Lind. 7 minutes to go. Fraga holding on to 5th. Dakota Dickerson now up to 8th. He may be a driver that can get into the top 10. Dakota Dickerson, who raced here last year, or started the season rather, with Newman Walks Racing. The last time he raced here was 2 years ago with Afterburner Autosports. A couple of top 5 finishes for Dakota Dickerson in his rookie season 2 years ago.
We have another red flag. Trying to find where we have a car off. Looking at the usual suspect corners, not seeing anything.
Yeah, agreed. I can't see anything on the racetrack at this point here. Again, as Michael said, red flag has flown. That's going to actually play to the hands of Igor Fraga, currently still P5.
Big time on that.
Rasmus Lind, though, still on top here with the red flag. Time's coming down, trying to figure out who's off the racetrack here. Number 91 machine, that's Igor Fraga. We've seen him already. He took the escape route, coming out of turn number 1 after damaging it.
Could be somebody into the tire barrier, just kick something out onto the track.
You got to think track debris or something, right?
Right.
That'd be it, Michael. Everyone coming into the pit lane. This is going to be a mad dash at the end. Now they were only kind of starting to build some heat into the tires, Michael, and I think that's going to be the interesting deal. We were 7 minutes, less than 7 minutes. We'll probably be down to probably 5. Yeah, indeed, 5.5 minutes remaining. By the time they get back rolling again, I got to say that it's going to be 4 minutes or less. Safety car heading out now. The AMR safety team going to run around the track. They'll do a track inspection.
They do such a great job.
Oh, man. You know what? It's one of the things, Michael, and I think it's we don't talk about it enough in terms of the fact that, it's great to have the Mazda Road to Indy at these IndyCar events. We want to have our drivers on the same racetracks that they might run on if they ever make the move to the Verizon IndyCar series. That's first and foremost, right? Second, we want them to be able to be on these tracks. We want them to be in front of the team owners as well. We want to make sure they know the systems. But, man, to be able to race here and have the same level of safety that the Verizon IndyCar series gets from the AMR safety team, those guys, the guys are absolute magic. They're there in a minute, and it's not in a minute. They're there in seconds. And that level of safety that they bring, man, for parents of these young drivers, I can tell you, it brings them a lot of comfort.
And they have the ability to spend time with these drivers. They know these drivers. So there's that relationship that's built, especially when you get to the Verizon IndyCar series. But even in this first rung of the USF 2000 series, these AMR safety guys are around week in, week out. The same faces. They know the potential. When they see an incident, they already have an idea of what potentially could be the problem. So that adds so much to the safety and the overall complexity of what happens on the track. But to be able to bring that component into that safety standard, it's unheard of in any other form of motorsports. What this AMR safety crew does is outstanding.
Less than 4 minutes remaining, and I'm sad to tell you, folks, Igor Fraga indeed loses his fast lap of the race. I believe that red flag may have came out because Igor had gone off the track. They wanted to make sure everything was fine. We're going to be going back to green here momentarily, but Fraga loses his fast lap, which was his one and only flyer.
So the difference between VK and Fraga, VK ran out of time, so was it Fraga's just sitting out there. If anybody needs it, that is a potential safety situation.
So again, we roll with about 3 minutes remaining, just over 3 minutes. Igor Fraga and Lucas Cole starting at the very tail of the field. Watch for those two guys to absolutely barnstorm their way to the front when we go racing. USF 2000 drivers have their first race event tomorrow. I love the time slot, Michael. 11:45, right at the noon hour. USF 2000. We'll have a packed grandstands. People are going to be pumped. You're going to see the very first run of the Mazda Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires at noon tomorrow. Put on a show because two of the finest young drivers in the field having trouble in qualifying. Igor Fraga in the number 91, Lucas Cole in the 22, both Brazilians. Watch for them to hook up and work their way forward.
And for Igor, being new to this, I expect Lucas Cole to run hard and clean, but Igor we haven't seen in this situation.
He's a clean driver, though. Most definitely.
They'll be all right.
Yeah, they'll be all right.
Rasmus Lint, he's quick. Minute 13:05.70. Kyle Kirkwood, Kalen Frederick, Donegan, Ming. They round out the top five. And it's Keen Dickerson, Jose Sierra, Vanderwatt, and Frost round out the top 10. We have 2 minutes remaining in qualifying. 2 minutes remaining. Enough time to get 2 laps in.
Michael, as well, we talk about what the top is here. A number of the drivers in this top 10 whole field under review. When the yellow flag came out, a number of drivers were hammered down full throttle through the couple of corners, and race control did not like that. They actually had a closed-door meeting yesterday with the USF and Pro Mazda drivers to talk to them about etiquette on the racetrack, racecraft, respect. They were too quick for there. We may see some penalties handed down for some drivers who did not heed the yellow flag and lower their pace accordingly.
And we must remember, although a professional racing series, these are still young drivers honing a racecraft, and sometimes that's the part that you don't necessarily learn until you have your wrist slapped a couple of times.
And that's still learning.
Right.
I was just going to say that. Sometimes you learn because people are teaching you. Sometimes you learn because you make a mistake. Sometimes you learn because you're penalized. and I get a slap on the wrist. And that'll get these guys dialed in that when they see a yellow, they got to slow down a bit, because anytime you see a yellow, there is peril on the other side of the corner, especially at a track like Toronto where it's blind. You can't see the other side. You've got to heed the flags.
Well, Kalen Frederick goes to P1.
Yes.
This will be the final lap of qualifying. Checkered flag should fly. So this is the last opportunity anybody has to put down a big one. Fredericks hammer down, minute 12, 73.11. That's the provisional pole.
Yeah, fantastic. Still a half a second off the track record, but Kalen Frederick of the 24 goes P1. 4/100ths of a second ahead of Kyle Kirkwood. This is a flyer, though. These drivers only, because of the yellow and the red, only starting to get the heat built into the tires. We will likely see some new drivers, some guys finding some speed in this final circuit. Frederick up top, Kirkwood in second. They're working their way down the back straightaway. Jose Sierra, the 12 for D-Force Racing in third. Rasmus Lint in fourth. Darren Keene fifth. Again, 4 different teams in the top 5. Juncos, Cape, D-Force, and Newman Walks Racing.
Here they come, the field off of turn number 8 for the final time. It's going to be a flurry of activity, Rob Howden. Let's see who gets her pole.
Sounds like somebody potentially into the wall here. Sounds like Daniel Frost potentially in the wall here as well. So there's a yellow flag somewhere on the racetrack. New fast lap, Kyle Kirkwood. Kirkwood, your point leader out of Florida for Cape Motorsports. The white number 8, the 8 ball goes P1. 112.438, almost 0.2 of a second quicker than Kalen Frederick, about 0.3 off the track record. Wow. Final lap. Dakota Dickerson goes to third for Arms Up Motorsports. Rasmus Lint fourth. Calvin Ming fifth. Jose Sierra in the sixth spot. It's Keith Donegan in seventh. Corey Enders eighth. Julian Vanderbott in ninth. Darren Keene went from 5th to 10th on the final lap.
That was a huge lap there.
Wow. I'm telling you, Kirkwood dropped the hammer on that final circuit. As I said, we knew the temperatures were coming up on the tires. We knew the guys were going to be able to lay it down, but Kyle Kirkwood getting the job done. The point leader just rolling on that momentum, Michael. Back-to-back wins at Road America. Confidence, poise, that momentum that he gets with his team. Kirkwood looking good, and again, focused on trying to win that championship. When we get to Portland on Labor Day weekend, the season finale for the Mazda Road to Indy.
We had a pretty good shot at breaking the track record of a minute 12.2. Kirkwood, minute 12.4. I think if we had another lap or so, we may have seen that. So Kyle Kirkwood, your pole sitter for race number 1 of the USF 2000 Series. That will happen tomorrow morning. 11-ish, 11:30,
11:45.
11:45.
Yeah, 11:45.
We will see this first run of the Mazda Road to Indy, these young drivers. And, boy, it's going to be exciting with Igor Fraga and Lucas Cole at the back of this field. It will be a thriller. Rob Howden.
Really cool, early part of the day. IndyCar practices at 9:50. When they finish practice, we go right into Pro Mazda for a race, right into USF 2000 for a race, right into Indy Lights for race number 1. It's going to be a really good look at the Mazda Road to Indy midway through the day.
You tell me that's not an exciting schedule. I'll sell you some real estate out by the ocean.
Indy Lights ready to go. I'm going to head over to the booth.
All right, you're going to do a little broadcasting on the radio network. We thank the voice of this Mazda Road to Indy program. Rob Howden joins us in the public address booth, and congratulations to Kyle Kirkwood. He will be the pole sitter for tomorrow's race number 1 for the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Series, powered by Mazda. There you see, qualifying the top 10. And coming up next, we will see for the first time, we have hidden these drivers for most of the morning, and now they're going to come out and make some noise of their own. The final rung of this Mazda Road to Indy ladder. It's the drivers of the Indy Lights Series. They get set for their first practice session of this race weekend. Let's run through our schedule quickly because it's nonstop activity for the remainder of the day. Obviously, we just talked about the Indy Lights Series.
Here comes Roger Ward at the moment. Over to Jim Shelton.
All right, Jim Rathman just kind of taking it easy here. Boy, I don't know what happened. Roger Ward is really biting fingernails if he could. And here he comes now. He's dropping back considerably. Okay.
Here's the checkered flag for Jim Rathman, the winner of the 44th annual 500-mile race.
The Verizon IndyCar Series on IndyCar Radio. Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio.
A white flag to Tom Sneva with a 10-second lead. Starts his last 2.5 miles.
Sneva, age 34, from Spokane, Washington, on his way to his first 500-mile victory, Doug.
And the fans on their feet in turn number 2, waving their hats, waving their scarves, whatever they've got, sending him up the backstretch.
Right here, they're doing the same thing. Everyone frantically and happily waving as he approaches turn 3.
The hats are up, the hands are up. Tom Sneva, a half a lap to his first Indianapolis 500 victory. He can coast almost from here. He's in 4.
The 67th running of the Indianapolis 500 is about to be capped off. To call the winner, here is the voice of the 500, Paul Page.
The Texaco star, Tom Sneva, screams for the line, the double checkered flag, and Tom Sneva has won the Indianapolis 500, his first victory ever at Indianapolis.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. From the streets of Toronto, it's time for the Indy Lights, presented by Cooper Tires on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Just getting the Honda Indy Toronto weekend started here at beautiful Exhibition Place. My name's Nick Yeoman. Rob Houghton joins us as we are set to go practicing for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. One Verizon IndyCar Series practice session already in the books. It was a pretty eventful one. Lots of guys tagging the wall and testing out the track limits. And now it's the future stars of the Verizon IndyCar Series with a chance to get on the racetrack for the very first time here at Exhibition Place. This is the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. Rob Houghton, once again, I say this about a lot of racetracks, but this really is one of my favorite stops of the entire season. A lot of energy behind this event, and you can already tell it on this Fan Friday here at Exhibition Place. A lot of people excited not only to see how those Canadian drivers do this weekend, but certainly to see some premier open-wheel racing around Exhibition Place.
Yeah, there's certainly a passion for motorsports here north of the border in Canada, and it's the lineup of series as well. Not only do we have the Verizon IndyCar Series here, the entire Mazda Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires, but you've also got the NASCAR Pinty Series. So a lot of the stock car fans in Canada, which there are many, are here as well to watch the Pinty's guys. That's why Fan Friday is so massive. Of course, a free entry to get into this place. It's a gorgeous day. It's beautiful blue skies. It's a little muggy, as you had said earlier. It's hot, but it's a great day here. And I'll tell you, the lineup for the autograph session for the Verizon IndyCar Series was massive. Out the door, you probably waited an hour to get a chance to see those guys.
You think there was a trio of Canadian drivers in high demand this weekend?
Yeah, when I went by, there was actually a couple of guards to make sure people didn't jump in right at Hinchcliffe and Wickens. Of course, Zachary Clayman DeMello as well. They're definitely going to be in high demand here this weekend. Of course, Hinchcliffe coming off that win in Iowa. That's huge, too. The amount of momentum coming in, the amount of buzz that built in the local Toronto area here. Obviously, there's a lot of stories in the newspapers. Hinch will be under the microscope here this weekend.
And I think the coolest thing is I spent some time walking around, not only in the paddock, but around the fan hospitality areas. Honda's got some displays set up. A lot of folks wearing those Hinchcliffe shirts. I mean, he is certainly, as we mentioned, two other Canadians with Robert Wickens, who's super talented, and Montreal Zachary Clayman DeMello, who has turned some heads this year as well. But this is Hinchtown country, and they love him up here, and certainly he's become the fan favorite when we come up here every year.
Cool deal. They obviously rolled out a bunch of new merchandise as well. If you've been by the IndyCar merchandise tent, they've got the new Mountie hat that I think is pretty cool. You're right. He's a superstar here in this country. A good run last year, was able to capitalize on the yellow flag early, ends up going to P3. A win here, though, in Toronto, I think it's going to be up there. You know, you talked to James about the wins that were massive for him. Of course, his first at St. Petersburg. To be able to win at Long Beach, I think if he wins here, that'll be the very top.
Just getting started with this 45-minute practice session, the only bit of on-track activity for the Indy Lights series today here at Exhibition Place. Okay, Rob, those were your IndyCar Canadian drivers to look at. There is certainly one that fans are going to be keeping their eye on this weekend, and for those joining us online, getting a good shot, the onboard camera for Dalton Kellett from right here in Toronto competing in the Indy Lights series.
Yeah, big weekend for Dalton. Of course, the friends, the family, the sponsors all here. He lives just west of the city in Stouffville. A guy that went to school just up the road as well in Kingston, got his degree in engineering mechanics. This is a guy that just loves racing. He came through the entire Mazda road to Indy, as you know, Nick. USF 2000, Pro Mazda and Indy Lights. But for Dalton Kellett, this is that one weekend he would really like to see if he can make it to the podium.
Yep, and he's one of those drivers competing for Michael Andretti's team. Michael owns 4 of the 7 competitors in the Indy Lights series this year, presented by Cooper Tires. So certainly Michael Andretti knows his way around Toronto and would love to see Dalton Kellett pick up perhaps a podium finish or maybe even pull off an upset and get that first win of his career. Let's check in with Dave First, who joins us this weekend here in Toronto. Dave, you sweating it out like I was on pit lane right now?
I remarked earlier during the IndyCar practice just how surprisingly and deceivingly hot and humid it was this morning for the IndyCar guys. I feel like the humidity level's gone down just a tad. Checked with the folks here on pit road at 60% humidity, so it is down just a tad. Sunsplash afternoon, though, here in the streets of Toronto. There are a few streaky white clouds above us, but overall we should be dry, perhaps dry throughout the course of the weekend, which won't be so bad either. Air temperature 78 degrees Fahrenheit. For our friends here in Canada, that's 26 degrees Celsius. Track temperature at 113 Fahrenheit, 45 degrees Celsius. Beautiful way to start this 3-day weekend of IndyCar racing and the NASCAR Pinty Series as well that Rob talked about earlier. They're here as well this weekend. All cars, by the way, on this race course, 11 turns, 1.7 miles around the streets of Toronto. We did see Pato O'Ward came back in for a couple of minutes. The guys poured over that Mazda machine, but everything appeared to be A-OK. So all cars out on track during this practice session right now, Dave.
Thank you so much, Dave. Happy to have you back with us here in Toronto. And he mentioned Pato O'Ward picked up his 6th pole position and 4th win 1 week ago, Rob Howden, at the tight bull ring at Iowa Speedway. He currently sits 7th on timing and scoring, obviously just getting up to speed. He's only turned 2 laps, but what a performance by that driver to get himself right there, nipping at the heels of Colton Herta in this championship and what was really a dominant run at Iowa Speedway.
I think the big thing for Pato was he kind of got the train back on the rails. You know what I mean? He came out of the box very strongly, won 3 races, I think 3 of the first 4 races. It looked like he was going to go on a roll. Pato's got that momentum. He's confident, but then he kind of hits that wall a bit when they got to the road course at Indianapolis. Of course, Colton Herta then goes on his 4-race run. Victor Franzoni ends that at Road America in round number 2. Pato's got to get it going again, and he comes to that tough racetrack that he hadn't been on for a couple of years. Raced, I believe, 2015, I think, in the Pro Mazda Championship. So it's been a couple of years since he's ever driven there. First time in the Indy Lights car, and out of the box, fastest in every session. Top practice, he topped single car qualifying, and he won the race going away. For Pato, I think you could see it in his face, and when I talked to him in Victory Lane, there was just that sense of relief, but also he was fired up and all ready to get to Toronto.
And, of course, we're hearing that there may be an opportunity for him to jump behind the wheel of an IndyCar.
Yeah, intel that I've got is that he has poured a seat at Harding Racing. We've already talked about the fact that Connor Daly jumping in the seat this weekend for Gabi Chavez, potentially seeing Gabi back later this year. The press release stated that Gabi would be back next year, and indeed, they're kind of running some tryouts to see who they're going to put in a second car in 2019. And I'm hearing that Pato's got a seat poured and indeed will test with Harding Racing at Mid-Ohio next week.
And I know you and I were kind of giddy about it, texting back and forth this week because the silly season is here. I mean, we're entering the final third, really, of open wheel racing here in North America, and this is right about the time every year where some of these seats are up for grabs. And in regards to the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires, we start to look at where the champion may end up, and then certainly this field's got some talented drivers that even if they don't win and they don't get that $1 million prize from Mazda to move up and run in the Indianapolis 500, there's still going to be some guys that get some serious looks from IndyCar teams.
Well, the George Michael Steinbrenner hasn't confirmed it, but every time we interview him about Andretti Steinbrenner Racing or a potential Steinbrenner Racing IndyCar effort, he's got to, well, we're looking at it, to, well, I really want to do it, to, hey, you know what? Yeah, it's a good possibility. Colton's doing so well this year. He's ready to move. Pato, I think, is ready to move. And Santi Urrutia has paid his dues. There's no doubt about that. 2 times a runner-up already. Not having the best season this year, but again, his name flirting around potentially to get a chance to drive for Harding Racing as well.
Let's check in once again on pit lane. Jake Query for the first time this weekend. Good afternoon, Jake.
Oh, it's interesting, Nick, here on pit lane when you watch the cars coming around. I remember a couple of years ago it was Santi Urrutia on track that all of a sudden made contact, and you could see it. Of course, the team had to sit and just watch. There's not much you could do. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you pull onto pit road here in Toronto, what you are doing is you're on the north end of BMO Field. That is the field that is the home stadium for Toronto FC, the MLS soccer club. And might I add, they continue to make changes to that. That area continues to expand, it seems, a little bit further out between the stadium and then the track course itself. But when they come around the north end, they have one of two options. One is to pull onto pit road. The other is to continue with a right-handed, very sharp turn that takes them around the stadium and back onto a left-handed turn that goes to the straight. But the trick here is this, Nick, and that is when they make that turn, you've got to kind of hug to the inside, but there's a big concrete wall right there, and it is very, very close for the cars to almost make contact on that inside line. But you have to hug it pretty tight, because if you get too loose, you're going to hit the barrier wall between the actual track and pit road. That's what Santi Urrutia did a year ago. Speaking of Santi Urrutia, his teammate Aaron Telitz just pulled out. He brought in that number 9 machine, Bilardi Autosport. They took a look over. They did what they typically do at the early part of a practice session. Gauge the temperature of the tires themselves. Check out the wear on those Cooper tires. They sent Aaron Telitz back out. Santi Urrutia had come in just a couple of circuits ago, and Dalton Kellett also was one of the first to come in after an install lap. But right now it's an empty pit road because Nick Yeoman, as Pato O'Ward goes past right now in that tricky area I was talking about, everybody right now is out on track. Colton Herta just did the same.
Yeah, good stuff from Jake. And what I love is you can tell how close Jake and Dave are right down there to the race cars, because pit lane, and the neat thing about it, it's right next to the racetrack. It kind of snakes its way with the S's with the racetrack and pit lane. But then you've also got, Rob, the kind of canyon of grandstands that fans are already starting to fill up this weekend that really sets up a neat opportunity to hear these cars and see these cars roar around pit lane. And certainly for the fans, they get an opportunity to see those drivers navigate a very technical part of the racetrack, as well as the unsung heroes, especially on the IndyCar side. The Lights drivers don't do pit stops, but to see those guys do the work down on pit lane, it's one of the coolest vantage points, I think, in all of IndyCar racing.
I really think that 8, 9, 10, 11 complex is probably the toughest one here, especially for our guys. You come through turn 8, you go from that pavement back across the concrete, you wait for the car to bite again when you get to the pavement on the other side, but then you come through turn number 9, the left-hander, you're trying to roll as much speed as you can. It's an off-camber right-hander coming back at turn number 10. We saw, I believe it was Zach Veach went a little wide there and tapped the wall a couple of years ago. And then you're flying, you're back on the throttle trying to roll out to the straightaway. They've opened it up a bit on turn 11, but in both USF 2000 and Pro Mazda qualifying, we had the guys that were on the top of the charts tag the wall there and destroy the right rear. It was Renus VK and Pro Mazda. He held on to the pole, was able to get out of the way off at Princess Gates. Igor Fraga for Exclusive Autosport just did it in USF 2000. It was his only flying lap, though. It came early in the session. He brought a red flag out. He loses his lap. He was one of the fastest guys out there. He ends up in, I think, 18th or 17th position for USF 2000. With these drivers here in Indy Lights, that part of that racetrack, which is, like you say, like a canyon, with the walls, with the fencing, with the grandstands, you make one little mistake there and you're going to end your day. I think turn 11, one of the most precarious parts of this racetrack.
Thanks to the onboard shot with Dalton Kellett, we see him roaring down into turn number 3, one of the best passing portions on this racetrack. I think the cool thing about this course, Rob, is there are some wide portions of the racetrack, especially for a street course. I mean, down the front straightaway and down the long stretch heading to turn 3. A lot of opportunity to gain some speed and make some passes. But then, as we see Dalton Kellett kind of enter that turn 7, 8, 9 portion of the racetrack, especially that part that you talk about around pit lane, it's very single file. It's very, very tough to go side by side.
They did the track walk, and I think I want to say it was around about 1:30, I think, on Thursday. I hopped into a golf cart with one of the engineers from Cooper Tires to get a good run around it. The one thing I picked up completely is when you see it on TV, it seems very wide coming down to the back straightaway.
Yeah.
It's not very wide. It's
These guys make it wide, though, don't they?
Exactly, but I'm coming down there saying, even all the drivers, man, I didn't know it was this narrow.
For sure.
It is a lot more narrow than I thought. Coming through turn 2, as you see Dalton rolling through there, you got to hit your marks, or you're in the wall on the outside, and they make it look wide. Somehow they go 3 wide, even with the Indy cars, and it just doesn't feel that wide when you're out there.
And certainly turn 3, as we talked about, one of the best passing parts of the racetrack. We've seen some pretty hairy incidents over the years as well down in that portion of the racetrack.
Do you want to talk about Enerson?
I know the Enerson family probably just loves that I bring it up, but a handful of years ago we saw young RC get airborne and scare the living daylights out, I think, of just about all of us at the racetrack. He walked away okay, but man, the closing rate down there too. I mean, it's phenomenal. And again, one of the best places to pass on this racetrack, and we've seen some pretty tremendous passing maneuvers as well.
Indeed. I love turn 3, that hard braking down into, of course, the concrete patch, which changes everything, the harsh winters we have here in Canada. But that 50 yards deeper, you got to expect it's pretty much the same here. You're carrying so much more speed into that braking zone. It may make turn 1 tougher to pass, but then again, if the cars are more
time, you've got to, they could dive deeper in the corners thanks to the smoother track. It's going to make it tough to pass, but there are going to be guys that figure it out a little bit faster than others, and that's may make turn 1 pretty interesting for this weekend.
I think it will. I really think it will. And I think a lot of the drivers that come in with the confidence in their cars, primarily Herta and O'Ward, who are just loving the machines they have right now. One of the things I took away from Iowa when I hosted the press conference after the race win for Pato O'Ward, it was a fact that Santiago Urrutia was absolutely down in the dumps. They've been chasing Andretti Autosport. The Bilardi Auto Racing crew, they won races. They swept here before.
Yeah.
If you look back to Felix Rosenquist sweeping the weekend here, they've been great, Bilardi has. This could be the opportunity for them to finally close up the gap, because I know that Santi and Aaron just getting frustrated that they always seem like they're just a half a step behind Andretti.
That is the voice of Rob Howden. My name is Nick Yeoman. This is the Indy Lights series presented by Cooper Tires on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. As we get about 10 minutes into this session, I should say closer to 20 minutes into this session, Colton Herta is P1. Let's check in with Jake Query first on pit lane here at Toronto.
Bob Edwards is a curious spectator watching in on Pato O'Ward, of course, with Andretti Autosport. And let's talk about a couple of things here, Rob. You've been around, of course, this sport for a long time and observed a lot of drivers as they've come up through. In terms of this Mazda road to Indy, let's begin with, from your perspective as an eye watching for talent, what things do you look for in this series that are maybe the final margin that separates a driver from, of course, being in lights and moving their way up into the Verizon IndyCar series?
Obviously, the first thing you're looking for the speed, but beyond that, you're looking for how a young driver just conducts the whole weekend, their approach right from the time that when they get to the track, the track walk, the preparation they put into getting ready for the weekend, how they build a relationship with their engineer, how they use data to improve, be it their own data or across their teammates. They're all the same things we do on the IndyCar side, and so you're really looking for those same skills and that same sort of approach, both mental and from a performance point of view with the Lights drivers.
Obviously, part of the Verizon IndyCar series, a great success comes from a guy that can immediately give feedback on the car itself, get a feel for the car, give engineering advice from the cockpit. In terms of these particular Dolaras within the Indy Lights, how much of it is in the hands of the driver itself? How much opportunity does it provide for these drivers to get a feel for making adjustments?
I think obviously the car is fairly sophisticated. You've got a number of areas to tune with the car. So I think, we as a team have to have the basic setup, baseline setup, if you will, right for each driver. But beyond that, there's certainly ability for the driver to, tune the car to their needs, and then also to, drive different ways, maybe on different parts of the track to extract the maximum speed from the car.
Obviously, Pato O'Ward, things seem to be coming together for him and coming together to the point where maybe he's ready to make that graduation. What has been your impression of him so far?
I think both Pato and Colton have both shown this year that they're ready for the next level, given the right opportunity. And I think for Mike and JF and myself, it's just great to see both of them race so close. But I think we've seen a number of occasions this year where they've raced very close with each other, but they've also given each other space, shown respect for each other, and they're all things that you'd like to see when they move up the ladder as well.
Is it with mixed emotions when you see someone graduate from your team within Lights and then perhaps sign with someone else when it comes to the Verizon IndyCar series?
Ideally, obviously, we'd like to keep all the talent in-house, but we don't have enough cars to do that. So I think it's a mixture of sadness and pride when we see the guys graduate with other teams.
Appreciate the time, and we'll let you get back to work here. I know Pato just brought the car in, so too did Colton, so we'll let you get to working with those guys.
Great, thank you.
All right, Rob Edwards again with Andretti Autosport here in Toronto. Dave first?
Yes, 6 of the 7 cars are back on pit road. That includes the aforementioned Patricio O'Ward. Colton Herta also on pit road. Interesting that Victor Franzotti, the guys over at Juncos, they changed out that front wing assembly on the number 23 Sol Red Mazda. So those guys making some big-time changes here during this 45-minute practice session. Usually we only have 30 minutes or so each and every weekend, but this one a bit extended, so 45 minutes. Dalton Kellett also on pit road, as is Aaron Telitz, Ryan Norman, those guys checking air pressures and air temperatures as well. Ryan Norman with the 4th place finish at Iowa, so he has another top 5 finish this season, doing a nice job, 5th so far in points. So activity kind of picking up, although there's kind of also a lot of looking and staring, waiting to go back out. With only so many tires, they don't want to use up so many of these, so quickly. But activity certainly picking up down here on pit road this afternoon here, Nick.
Yeah, it's kind of a private test session right now for Santi Urrutia, who appears to be the only driver who is pounding the pavement right now on the racetrack. He sits 3rd quick. It is the Andretti teammates, Andretti Steinbrenner Running's Colton Herta, who is P1 at a minute 5.637. He's about the only driver that's turned a sub-minute 6 lap, and he did about 3 in a row at a minute 5.9, a minute 5.7, and a minute 5.6. 3 consecutive laps for Colton Herta, as he was P1 here at Road America, here at Exhibition Place in Toronto. Certainly a lot of jumbling up in the timing and scoring, Rob, but let's put a bow on Jake's conversation with Rob Edwards, and certainly that's the downside of running a major conglomerate of race teams where you've got 4 in Indy Lights. They've got a ton of talent, but moving up to IndyCar, those seats aren't necessarily always going to be available.
And that's just it, What do these guys do? When you've got Rossi, you've got Hunter Ray, you've got Marco, you got the one extra seat, and they end up getting Veach back. Because remember, Zach Veach actually started with Andretti Autosport when he ran in the USF 2000 program, stuck with them to Pro Mazda. He ended up moving over to Bilardi Auto Racing for the Indy Lights program, won a bunch of races. He comes back. No one's leaving there. They're all comfortable. And again, that's one of the things that Rob said is that, you've got these great young drivers. If you have nowhere to put them, you just got nowhere to put them. You got to kind of let them go and let them stretch their own wings and get out and make it happen. And eventually you're going to be battling against the guy that you kind of dialed in and helped train and helped get ready to go. One of the things I did want to bring up, Nick, when we were watching the drivers, it was actually Dalton Kellett that came into pit lane. You saw one of the crew guys out there with the mirror on the long stick looking underneath the car. There are some new parts of this racetrack, but as they come into turn number 8, you can see how bumpy it is on the entry. Ride height's so important in a racetrack like this. When they come in, they'll get that long stick with the mirror underneath it so they can check the ride height. They can look at the skid plate on the bottom, see whether or not it's rubbing, whether or not they need to raise the car at all. I would say, obviously, with that stick out looking underneath the car, that Dalton very likely complaining of the car bottoming out somewhere on the racetrack.
And there's no doubt, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges, not just here at Toronto, but any street course we go to. I mean, yeah, they've repaved some sections, but it's still city streets. There's still not going to be the asphalt smooth that you see a lot of permanent racetracks. And ride height is one of those things that I think if you talk to these engineers, you're kind of always chasing that, aren't you?
Well, it's a big part of just the car's dynamics as well. You know, the ride height can change. It's not just a flat ride height. You can raise the rear up to get some more rake in the car. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Ride height key in terms of the way the car's going to roll, where the roll centers are as well. It was huge last weekend in Iowa, too. You know, it's just very crucial. These cars are very sensitive to the rake of the car and again to ride height and all the roll centers.
Marshall Pruitt from Racer Magazine had a pretty interesting article a little bit earlier this week about Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing kind of inching their way forward, thinking about making the move to running 3 full-time cars for the Verizon IndyCar Series. They've got that partnership with Colton Herta, who's run for Bobby Rahal in a BMW Sports Car Series. May that be a landing spot, you think? A little smoke to that fire?
Yeah, in my mind, that's probably one of the places that he would end up, indeed. With the connection that they've already had, him running for the sports car team, I think that would be the target you would put on where Colton Herta's going to go. Will we see him potentially shake a car down or drive for Harding Racing? Yeah, I think that we're going to see him behind the wheel. The only issue is you've got to look at the races that are available. If Mike Hardy wants to put an Indy Lights driver in the car, are they going to do double duty at a weekend? Because if you're talking about Herta or Urrutia or Award, those are the top 3 drivers in the championship battle. Are they going to go double duty one weekend, or are they going to skip the weekend? Or do they look at the 2 races that are not on the schedule, and that's Pocono and Sonoma? That's a possibility, I guess, but you got to think that you maybe potentially put Gabby back in the car for Pocono, where he did so well last year.
Yeah, that's asking a lot, especially for those guys to do double duty. We don't see that very often anymore in the IndyCar series, like you do maybe in the NASCAR type series, and especially for those 3 drivers that you mentioned, the ones that have been kind of linked to possibly filling one of the spots with Harding Racing, or one of the spots right now. I know there's been some talk about that organization wanting to eventually go to 2 cars, but those 3 drivers are in the midst of a championship battle, and that really does have to be the focus for them, doesn't it?
Well, not only do they want the scholarship money, the $1 million that would help them move into the Verizon IndyCar Series, you want to put that Indy Lights title on the resume as well. Regardless of what happens to you, that's something that'll hold forever. You know, Kyle Kaiser's got that. He's made the move. Of course, winning the scholarship last year. Thankfully, it sounds like we're potentially going to see Kyle Kaiser back for at the very least Sonoma at the end of the year. Of course, he's from Santa Clara. That'll be a home race for him. Maybe a little easier to pick up some additional sponsorship. But yeah, good potential to see Kyle Kaiser back. But these guys all want to win that championship. They want the $1 million. A double duty weekend, I don't know if you roll the dice on it. If anybody does, maybe let's say we're looking at Portland. What if Santi Urrutia is maybe out of the championship at that point? You know, if you have no opportunity to do it, do you jump behind the wheel of the Harding car?
It's going to be interesting, no doubt about it, and there's always going to be a lot of moving pieces. I'm not sure we expect to see a major, mix-up at the top of the IndyCar thing. Obviously, we're all wondering about the final say-so of this McLaren story moving to IndyCar, or possibly not, and the dominoes that could create. But it is certainly fascinating to watch the dominoes fall at the top of the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. As, again, you win a championship in Indy Lights, you get a guaranteed $1 million scholarship that you can take to a Verizon IndyCar Series team to compete in the Indianapolis 500, as well as a handful of other events. And honestly, Rob, it has propelled some of these drivers into stardom, no doubt about it, starting in Indy Lights, winning that championship, and just getting that opportunity to run in the Verizon IndyCar Series. That's all you can ask for. You get that shot, you run with it, you make the most of it, and guys like Joseph Newgarden have done it in the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Yeah, Santi Urrutia back to the top of the charts, a 105.440, almost 0.2 of a second quicker than Colton Herta. But you're right, I think we're talking about 3 guys that potentially are going to test for Harding or may move to Rahal Letterman Lanigan and Colton Herta. We're going to see over maybe half or more of the field moving to the Verizon IndyCar Series next year. I know that Aaron Telitz, with his management team, they're talking to IndyCar teams as well. He's got some sponsorship that wants to be in the Verizon IndyCar Series. They need to be there for that sponsorship to be able to activate. So we may see Aaron Telitz put together some kind of a deal as well. That's going to blow things wide open for Indy Lights, because I think with the field we have in Pro Mazda, there's stuff coming down the pipe. I'm not yet at liberty to kind of roll out everything that's going on, but there is so much positivity happening behind closed doors with at Anderson Promotions with some of the stuff that they're putting together, some new team incentives. A lot of stuff's going on, and I actually released it in my Mazda Road to Indy Insider segment on Road to Indy TV. I'm also hearing, and I talked to Colin Hale, I'm hearing that Carlin Racing's going to be back next year. I think that was a big blow, losing them.
Sure.
And, if you've been around the paddock at all, especially at Iowa and Road America, Sam Schmidt hanging around a lot. I think Sam wants to get back into the IndyCar program as well.
I think all those guys, especially those team owners, they understand the value, not just of getting a training ground for drivers, but for getting the crew members up and going. I don't think you have to look very far to the fact that Sam Schmidt's organization has turned into a consistent contender. Robert Wickens has been at the front all season long. James Hinchcliffe just pulled off a massive victory at Iowa 1 week ago. And then from a Carlin standpoint, they maybe haven't had a ton of success, but I don't think anyone can say that they've embarrassed themselves this year. In their initial year, it's been really strong, and I think the fact that those organizations ran an Indy Lights and have used those guys to train and get ready for those teams, especially at the same racetracks that the Indy Lights Series competes on, I think that type of experience, you can't set a number on just how valuable that is.
Well, you look at Carlin. The primary reason why they did not run an Indy Lights program is they used the staff from Indy Lights to fill the crew on the IndyCar level. Those are the guys that learned already in Lights and other programs, so we're able to jump right up. Now, when I look at Carlin, people say, the results aren't there, they're struggling a little bit. I just look, when we came into the season, I think it was the 10th race or 11th race was Iowa. For the first four or five races, I want to say it was like an 18.6 was the average finish for Max Chilton. In the next 5 races, 16.6. Yeah. So, you're making an average of 2 position improvement. Stuff happens on the racetrack, of course. They're getting better and better, and we knew that out of Carlin. Are they going to be up top? Are they going to win races this year or next? Probably not, because this series is so unbelievably competitive. But I think they're making ground. They're making moves, and you said it. If they get back to the Indy Lights program, they're going to be able to start tailoring drivers. They're going to be able to start tailoring crew members that will eventually going to find their way to the IndyCar program.
Yep, and we talked about it. Charlie Kimball, he's had, again, it's been an up and down. It's been a typical debut season for a new IndyCar team.
Exactly.
But there have been some decent results for Charlie Kimball, who was had an 8th place finish in the second Detroit race, had a top 10 at Texas Motor Speedway. So they're making those strides, and certainly, as you talk about, maybe nothing concrete right now, but from all the things that you're hearing, it seems like there is some potential for some growth with the Indy Lights Series. And we're really excited to have Parker Thompson, one of the really top drivers in Pro Mazda, join us for race number 2 for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. That's going to be 12:25 Eastern on Sunday. Race 1, 12:40 Eastern on Saturday for Indy Lights coverage here on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. Parker Thompson, really excited to have him. Another Canadian driver going to join us, and he's been doing a great job in the Pro Mazda Series.
What I love about it is he's going to be able to give us real seat in the seat of the pants feedback on what this racetrack's like. And I'll tell you, we know last year's Pro Mazda, great race car, that we had it for the last number of years, right? I think we broke the track record by 3.5 seconds earlier today. That's how fast the new PM18 is. It's much more like the Dallara IL-15 in Indy Lights, and we haven't seen that yet either. I can't wait to see after this season the drivers that come out of Pro Mazda, the new car, how good are they going to be? How quickly are they going to take the IL-15 in Indy Lights?
Yeah, no doubt about it. The closer those cars get to each other, the learning curve all of a sudden doesn't become nearly as steep for those drivers. And there's a bunch of them, a lot of talented drivers in Pro Mazda that we expect to see in Indy Lights next year. As for this year, the 7 drivers competing here in practice, all chasing Santi Urrutia, whose quick lap at a minute 5.440 is the time to beat right now. That bumped Colton Herta to P2 at a minute 5.5. Ryan Norman's had a nice session so far as he's gotten under a minute 6 at a minute 5.83. Pato O'Ward sits in 4th, Victor Franzoni 5th, Aaron Thielitz 6th, and Toronto's Dalton Kellett sits 7th. Back to pit lane and Jake Query.
I think you had just mentioned Victor Franzoni just a second ago. He was the only on pit road along with Aaron Thielitz. Now he is the lone car here on pit road, that number 23 Juncos machine. They've taken a very long, hard look at the left side rear of the machine itself. They're trying to work on just the overall balance. They looked at the underbody of that number 23 Mazda Juncos racing machine and now are making spring adjustments on the rear of the car. I think we're going to see Franzoni go back out, although the front cowling right now is off, and they continue to make spring adjustments to the front as well. So balance. When you start talking about Toronto, Nick, and you talk about street courses, of course, that's the real challenge because you get multiple surfaces. You get, and I think sometimes we forget about this, that a regular civilian street has a bit of a crowning that is designed for very subtle rain runoff. You don't notice it in your passenger car, but you get so close to the ground in these machines, that balance starts throwing you off a little bit. And obviously with Franzoni and all of these teams, that's something that they are constantly working on, constantly tweaking. Santi Urrutia just goes off now up pit road as Franzoni sits and waits. So we'll see if they get enough time here in the last quarter or so of this particular session to get that 23 machine back out.
And Rob, thanks to the onboard shot that we see of Dalton Kellett handing down to turn number 3, you can watch the hand movement. Jake talks about it, the different surfaces and how tough it is to get a grip and get a handle on their street courses. This 11-turn one here at Exhibition Place, but Dalton Kellett sawing on that steering wheel, using the curbs to his advantage, and you can see no power steering on these race cars as these drivers really try to hold on for dear life.
You know what, the thing about it, Nick, is I talked to one of the lead spotters and driver trainers, coaches, Barry Waddell, and we talked a lot about the fact that you're trying to get the drivers, especially the ones coming up through USF 2000 and Pro Mazda, to slow their hands down. The input's there. They know the car's not where they want it. You can see that Dalton's having to jerk the car a little bit to get it in there over the bumps, just really working the wheel. Quick hands are good when you're in an issue if you got a spin coming, but you really want to have those slow hands, real easy on the input on these cars because they will dance around, as you say.
Had a brief runoff for Aaron Thielitz in car number 9 for Bilardi Auto Racing, who got off the racetrack in turn number 3 down that long back straightaway. He tested the runoff area. Apparently no damage as he fired that car back up, turned it around, got it back onto the racetrack. Meanwhile, we will go back to pit lane and check in once again with Dave First.
Just a quick note about his teammate, Santiago Urrutia. Jake was talking about how the number 5 was brought back to pit road only briefly, as if driving on the street circuit wasn't tough enough with all the bumps and these little nuances around this 1.7-mile layout. They brought Urrutia back. They had to tighten up that left front tire. So imagine going around this race course, already feeling all types of vibrations, and oh, by the way, your left front's a little loose. So they came back in, tightened it up, sent him back out. Also, with basically 11 minutes remaining in this practice session, we've got, wait for it, guys, fresh sets of Cooper tires all laid out. So some guys are going to be coming back in. It looks like they might try on some sticker blacks, some sticker Cooper tires. So that'll make things a little more interesting here in this last 10 minutes.
Yeah, it certainly will, Dave. First, thank you so much. As Santi Urrutia's best lap still at a minute 5.44. Pato O'Ward's picked it up a little bit, Rob Howden, as he is nipping at his heels at a minute 05.458. So Pato O'Ward has found some speed. Colton Herta is right there about 1/10 of a second off. Ryan Norman about 3/10 off. And Victor Franzoni all within, in fact, the entire field is within about a half a second. So that tells you just how competitive this series is. As Dave talked about, though, it's kind of what we expect, and it's going to make this final 10 minutes pretty interesting to see if these drivers come on, put pit lane, put on a fresh set of Cooper tires, and start trimming out for some fast laps.
Yeah, the thing about this racetrack is, and even though we only have 7 drivers in the field, it is not easy to pass here at Toronto. There's only a couple of really great opportunities. End of the straightaway, of course. Everything else, you got to be pretty aggressive. Remember, they get 4 sets of Cooper tires for the 5 sessions that they'll have. The 2 qualifiers, of course, and then the races, adding on to the practice we're watching now. 4 sets of tires. They have 1 set of carryover used tires that they bring from Road America. That's what everybody started this session on. You can only use those carryover tires in this first practice session. It seems to me like they're trying to kind of run these practice sessions with just that 1 set, maybe just do a qualifying sim at the end. They're trying to save that rubber because they know how important it is to use that fresh rubber to make sure you qualify up front.
I got to report that Ryan Norman just spun in turn 6. I'll tell you what, I saw the shot of him coming around, and I wasn't quite sure. It looked like that car was getting sideways.
He was loose.
You're nodding your head.
Yeah.
We're not sure where he ended up, but that car looked like the rear end was fishtailing just a bit, and that is exiting turn 6, that shot we see with the Canadian flag just to the right of BMO Field. So Ryan Norman apparently sitting to driver's right at the exit of turn number 6, which is going to slow this session, at least that portion of the racetrack. We talked about Ryan Norman's had a good session, sitting fourth quick, just about 0.3 of a second, 0.4 of a second off of the quick lap for Santi Urrutia, and now we just got the report that he will take that Journey Mazda back to pit lane. Love seeing that Journey sponsorship on that car. You know, I went and saw the Foo Fighters last night.
I heard that.
Pretty awesome show.
Can you still hear this morning?
No, I can't hear a thing.
But they are awesome, aren't they?
I had a really good time at the Rogers Center. Man, what a cool place. The home of the Blue Jays for so many years, and great venue for a concert. And I'm sure a lot of those fans that were at that concert made their way out to the racetrack today, and they, like me, can't hear very well, but that's what better place to go to when your ears are ringing.
Next year, we need to take you to a Toronto Argonaut game.
Yeah.
We need to see some CFL. We'll really Canadianize you.
I'm down.
Get you dialed in.
I love it. It's just about that time of year for training camps for the NFL, and then certainly right in the heart of the CFL season. Always fun to check in on how those teams are doing. Again, we are just under about, 8 minutes to go, 7 minutes to go here in this practice session at Exhibition Place here in Toronto for the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. Only one practice session, too, Rob. That's kind of been the norm on these doubleheader weekends. So for these teams, and you talked about the tires and how you play that strategy out from a setup standpoint, this is all you get, those 45 minutes before you really have to get those cars dialed up for qualifying and racing.
One of the crazy things about this particular weekend is the fact that we always talk about there's different rubbers out there. We have so many different series here.
Yeah.
There's the Cooper Tires for the road to Indy, the Firestones for the guys in the Verizon IndyCar series. You've got your NASCAR Pinties. You've got your the Porsche Cup guys here as well. Every time these guys get out here, the track is radically different, and that's, I think, especially in these sessions, they try to break it up into two. You, of course, finish your session, you get back in, you pour over the data with your engineer, you come up with the changes you want to make, you go out and get a feel for it in the next session at the start. They'll do that in qualifying. They'll go out, they'll get a feel for it for the first couple laps. Did the changes we make, did they provide the results we wanted? Because the track is so different, they come in halfway through that qualifying run and boom, that's when you're making that final change to try to take a run.
And the good news is the weather looks like it's going to be pretty good all weekend. I tentatively say that because I know, knock on wood, it can change in a heartbeat this time of year. But, session after session, having different rubber compounds laid down and never completely washed off, that's an interesting challenge for a lot of these drivers. Again, we're seeing some great shots from Dalton Kellett heading down into turn number 1 here at Toronto. Day first, just about 5.5 minutes to go. Everybody chasing Santi Urrutia.
Chasing Santiago Urrutia. We have the first takers of sticker Cooper tires. That belongs to Ryan Norman. So the 48 just now going back out on this race course. He's got a set of sticker Coopers. Interesting to note, Patricio Ward, they still have sticker Coopers laying on pit road. He just came in, laid that rear wing back a notch. So a little less wing this time. They've got the tires laid out. My guess is that he might be in. As soon as I say that, they are putting them back on the pit cart. So he's going to stick with those scuffed tires the rest of this 5-minute session. But it's interesting, Patricio Ward laying back that rear wing here in this session.
Yep, and it is that time, Rob Howden. Talk about that, laying that rear wing down. That's going to help you on these two massive straightaways here in Toronto.
The interesting thing I'm hearing is that potentially electing not to go to new tires.
Yeah.
That's if somebody's not going to go to new tires, that means they're trying to save those tires. They're going to want to have fresh rubber for qualifying and fresh rubber for the races. Or you use 2 sets of fresh tires in each qualifying session to see what you can do. That's probably more of an aggressive move. Just as I said that, we looked at the top of the charts. Victor Franzoni goes P1. 105.327, Nick, a tenth of a second quicker than Santiago Urrutia. Franzoni, of course, coming off that great win at Road America.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It was an emotionally charged victory for Victor Franzoni, career win number 1 in the Indy Lights Series presented by Cooper Tires. He runs that Soul Red Mazda car, Rob, as the reigning Pro Mazda champion, as he was the winner of that scholarship that gave him the opportunity to run for Juncos Racing. And I feel like he's done a pretty nice job week in, week out, getting a little bit better, a little bit stronger, and ultimately it paid off at Road America.
I think he was making a couple little mistakes early on. In talking to Ricardo Juncos, they knew that Victor had to learn the car. No test time. That's the thing. He came in
tough.
with not enough budget. You don't make the scholarship is enough to get you in the program. It's not enough to really get some of the great extras. You're not doing a lot of preseason testing. Pato Award, Colton Herta, they put a lot of testing miles in. Victor wasn't able to do that, so he came out at the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg really raw. He's been able to learn the car, get comfortable, and the one thing I see, and Nick, and you see it when you're in the paddock as well, this team loves their driver.
For sure.
And that doesn't always happen. Yeah, there are teams that'll work their butt off for their driver. These guys have rallied around Victor. They absolutely love him. Ricardo's completely, talking to AJ Smith, one of his mechanics, they'll do anything for Victor Franzoni. They know that this kid would sleep on the floor and sweep the floors if he had to. When you get your team around you like that, it's going to move forward later in the season.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a local yellow for Ryan Norman, who has buried that Journey Mazda into the tire barriers. It looks like that is just towards the entrance of pit lane. Let's go back to pit road and check in with Dave first.
One of the interested spectators during the end of the session happens to be Tony Kanaan, who spent some time in Lights and Atlantics and all that. I mean, you drove here when? How long ago was that, Tony?
Why are you going to put me in that spot?
I just know. I want perspective.
96 was my first year here, and we did 96 and 97. So turn 11 was a little bit different, but everything else was the same. So yeah, I've been coming here since 96, and the 2 years. I remember the first year actually. Ali was on the pole, and I was third. And Steve Horn came to me and said, "Guys, you guys take care of each other. So I don't want to see anything happen in turn one after the start. So take care." And I dive bomb Ado into turn 3 in the end of the back straightaway and hit him and took both of our cars out of the race. And the pit line, the pit lane. Where the truck
was on the other side. Yeah.
It was on the other side, and I never actually made it back. I went straight back to the hotel. I was so afraid of Steve Horn.
So it started early, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
You still haven't learned.
Yeah, the rivalry started way earlier, and I took him out. He was in the lead.
I saw you over here. Just want to bring you on. By the way, how was practice earlier today? You got another practice coming up here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was all right. I think the first session is always a little weird because the track gets so much better, so we try not to overreact. The rookies have an extra set of tires, right. So you see some people better than others. But yeah, no, I think we have a pretty decent car. I mean, it wasn't like huge problems front or rear, understeer, oversteer, so we'll see. But this session's actually going to dictate what we're going to do for tomorrow.
Have a good time this afternoon. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, man. That's Tony Kanaan down here, one-time Lights driver and champion as well, checking out the end of this practice session. Red and Checkers have come out to bring this session to a close. Jay Query?
Session is complete for all drivers. That includes Pato O'Ward, who we talked about, things coming together for you all of a sudden now. Here you are really at a good point in this season. But let's talk first off just about that run and this track. Your impressions of Toronto?
I've never driven the Indy Lights car around Toronto, so it was a new experience for me. I saw the new paving on the front stretch and some other areas. It's a tough course, man. I got to do it in 16 in Pro Mazda, but in this Indy Lights car, it's way more on edge, and it's gonna be a tough one. It's not gonna be an easy one to keep it tidy throughout the whole race. At least in qualifying where you're trying to go that extra faster than everybody else. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. It's a track I enjoy driving. I think it suits my driving style. We just have to work a little bit more on the car and get it set for tomorrow qualifying. There is a lot of discussion this week that perhaps things are accelerating in terms of your graduation into the Verizon IndyCar Series. What can you tell us? There's been talks, but nothing is a done seal deal yet. So I'm going to keep working hard, and I don't want to switch my focus from the lights. I want to win this championship. So as of now, I think it's heading in the right direction. We're looking. We're going to be looking good for next year, and I think the rest of this season is going to be a nice battle with my teammate and everybody else.
Appreciate the time. Good luck for the rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much.
That's Pato Award, Nick.
Fantastic stuff from Jake Query and Dave First with, one of the grizzled old vets of the IndyCar series and Tony Kanaan, who won long time ago. I know he'd probably hate me saying that, but was competing in the Indy Lights series presented by Cooper Tires, along with Elio Castroneves, as he mentioned, and then Jake talking to one of the fast guys, the championship contenders in Pato Award.
Pato Award would do very well to have a career as long and as solid as Tony Kanaan. No doubt about that. One of the superstars in the Verizon IndyCar series. But Pato, I love the fact that he's getting confident now. We're going to see him next year very likely in the Verizon IndyCar series. And for us in the road to Indy, that's what we do this for. Even you talk to John Doonan when he's, you're a Mazda guy for how many years, and then they're going to send you off to the Verizon IndyCar series. You're not going to have that Mazda branding, but they get so much pride out of knowing those drivers that work their way forward.
So, again, the session ends with a red flag for Ryan Norman getting into the tires right before the entrance of pit lane. We got a report that he lost the nose of that machine. So that ends the session. It's Victor Franzoni who ends up P1 at a minute 5.32. Santi Urrutia was second. Pato Award third. Colton Herta fourth. Ryan Norman ended up fifth quick. Aaron Thielitz sixth. And Dalton Kellett seventh. You heard Dave and Tony Kanaan preview second IndyCar practice session coming your way at the bottom of the hour at about 13 minutes from now. Mark Janes, Rob Howden will guide you through that with Tony Laporta and Jake Query on pit lane. My name's Nick Yeoman. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for Indy Lights qualifying bright and early, 8:35 Eastern time. We'll get the day started, and before you know it, we'll go racing for the Indy Lights series presented by Cooper Tires at 12:40 Eastern Saturday afternoon. So long from Toronto, as it's Victor Franzoni, P1, after practice number 1 for Indy Lights.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
Green flag is in the air. Pedro Hita gets shoved down nearly into pit lane. He'll drop to about 6th or 7th. Here comes Ed Jones. Jones to the outside. Michael Young, he'll clear him into turn number 1.
For the final time, our points leader goes around. Ed Jones just got by Dean Stolman. Now Stolman starting to take a look to the inside. Further back, Sorrellis battling with Kellett. So it's Jones. That is the machine of Stolman.
dropping back considerably. Okay.
Here's the checkered flag for Jim Rathman, the winner of the 44th annual 500-mile race.
The Verizon IndyCar Series on IndyCar Radio. Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio.
A white flag to Tom Sneva with a 10-second lead. Starts his last 2.5 miles.
Sneva, age 34, from Spokane, Washington, on his way to his first 500-mile victory, Doug.
And the fans on their feet in turn number 2, waving their hats, waving their scarves, whatever they've got, sending him up the backstretch.
By here, they're doing the same thing. Everyone frantically and happily waving as he approaches turn 3.
The hats are off, the hands are up. Tom Sneva, a half a lap to his first Indianapolis 500 victory. He could coast almost from here. He's in 4th. The 67th running of the Indianapolis 500 is about to be capped off. To call the winner, here is the voice of the 500, Paul Page. The Texaco star, Tom Sneva, screams for the line, the double checkered flag, and Tom Sneva has won the Indianapolis 500, his first victory ever at Indianapolis.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
And there is the white flag for number 3, John Rutherford. Pick it up, Ron Carroll.
Okay, Sid, and here he comes right now from that number 25th position in the starting field. Johnny Rutherford wins, or is about to win, his first 500 over to Howdy Bell in turn 2.
I'm really happy for Johnny and Betty because they're great people, and he likes homemade strawberry ice cream, incidentally, as he heads up the backstretch to Jerry Baker.
The test now goes past us, Howdy, heading in toward number 3, and as you say, one super guy apparently off to the best win of his career. Doug?
The crowd on its feet, waving their hats, waving their arms, as the red, white, and blue helmet of Johnny Rutherford in the bright orange car goes streaking by over into turn number 4. Here's Jim Shelton.
Handsome driver, winning smile, and Johnny Rutherford. And here to call the winner is the voice of the 500, Sid Collins.
And here's the checkered flag for Johnny Rutherford, winner of the 1974 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Mute off that makes you talking shit now. I'm a professional.
From the streets of Toronto, it's time for the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
And it's time for the Honda Indy Toronto. Mark James ready for practice session number 2 in preparation for Sunday's race. Session 1 already in the books. Scott Dixon, Graham Rahal, Alexander Rossi, Duca Masato, Marco Andretti, the top 5. And Rob Howden joins me in the booth here in Toronto. And Rob, interesting session, some issues for Andretti Autosport, both Ryan Hunter-Reay, Alexander Rossi finding the outside retaining wall on opposite sides of the race car, in fact. Clement DeMello, an issue with the runoff area in turn number 3, but a brief dust-up between the rivalry that a lot of folks in a lot of places are trying to get to build between Alexander Rossi and Robert Wickett.
Well, they apparently like to fuel it right now as well. It's not like they're on the same racetrack at the same time in every corner. But man, I like rivalries myself, and I like the fact that they are keeping it going. And of course, here, hometown home race for Robert Wickens. I think the crowd will be a little more on the Canadian side this time around.
We have a couple of pit reporters helping us with this session, and one of them is Jake Query. Jake, a beautiful summer day here in one of North America's great cities.
Mark, it is exactly that, and it's always one of my favorite things to do because this is one of the few times I get to use my knowledge of Celsius and Fahrenheit. 29 degrees Celsius is the ambient temperature. That translates to 84 degrees, by the way, in terms of Fahrenheit. The track temperature, 126, 52 degrees Celsius. That temperature is pretty consistent throughout, although when you start to go into turn 3, that is the hottest area of this racetrack. It's 130 degrees. The track president, who is watching this with a very keen eye and making sure that even though the track is hot, that everything stays cool here, and it is very cool to be in Toronto. He's the president of the Honda Indy Toronto. I'm talking about Jeff Atkinson. And Jeff, first and foremost, thanks for the hospitality and once again having back the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Yeah, we're excited to be back in Toronto. Obviously, we got a lot of momentum with James Hinchcliffe coming in this race weekend, but our today is a Fan Friday with the Ontario Honda dealers and Sport of Make-A-Wish. Got a huge crowd here on the Friday, and we're excited for Saturday and Sunday.
You know, it's interesting. Let's talk first and foremost about, because this is, and I think it's so important, Jeff, just the overall, date regularity, if you will. People know what time of year it is that the Honda Indy Toronto is going to be taking place. It's a long-standing event here. But what kind of tweaks and changes do you make from one year to the next?
Date equity is incredibly important. You know, it's important that the city knows when this event is, and to have the date, obviously, the past few years being the same one, it allows the fans to make their decision for their summer travels. But I think overall the changes we make on an annual basis are really done to enhance the fan experience. I think we've realized for this event especially, we get a lot of first-time people out to the event. First-time, hopefully, IndyCar fans. And what we've done is we spent a lot of time trying to find other places other than our grandstands so guests can enjoy watching the race in action. We've added a great viewing platform between turn 4 and 5. There's an incredible viewing platform at turn 1. And we've also done a better job at highlighting our great general admission areas to watch the race. And I think the fans will appreciate that. And I think fan experience overall is just a key initiative, not only to IndyCar racing, but sports in general.
You mentioned James Hinchcliffe. Obviously, Hinchcliffe is so popular here. He is the mayor of Hinchtown after all. But let's talk as well about Robert Wickens, another Ontario native who has really come on strong here as a rookie. And I would think that also gives some buzz in the area.
Exactly, and have a guy from Guelph, Ontario, which is not too far down the road, about not equal distance to Oakville, but having another Ontario driver in this race gives us more stories. And we have Zachary Clement DeMello from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So we'll be curious to know who wins the race this weekend, but also who is the best Canadian. The Canadians will argue we want to win the race.
This is such a great city, Toronto, an international city, and one that is so clean and hospitable. Is there any way to know what percentage of the fans that are taking in this Verizon IndyCar Series event over the weekend are visitors to your city as opposed to those that live in Ontario?
Yeah, it's about 10 to 15%. We do post-event analysis on it. Obviously, we have a great contingent from all the support series that come in, but it's the fans that make the event special. We're not that far of a drive from Buffalo, a couple-hour drive, and it could be as simple as driving the 5 hours from Quebec City, or sorry, not Quebec City, but Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And you know, for our festival goers, this is just a destination for them. The guests from the U.S., the dollar's a little bit stronger in the U.S., so it's a little bit of a discount to drive up here to come to Canada. So it's just a great event to see, and there's a lot to see and do away from the racetrack, whether it be the CN Tower, the concerts, the food and beverage. the nightlife is just incredible in the city of Toronto.
Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about the security incident yesterday in the city of Toronto, but it seems as though you guys with the Toronto police got a firm hold on that and were able to kind of move forward, and fans can know that they're going to be safe when they come.
Absolutely, and for us, we spend a lot of time working our security plan, and for us, it's unchanged. And we're not going to divulge what that plan is, but we spend a lot of time being out front of everything, and a lot of the initiatives we've added were done a few years ago. And right now, for us, it's Green Savory overall. We're lucky to have other events that we organize and promote, so you really learn those best practices from each of the markets and apply them at the different events that you own or operate.
Jeff, I appreciate the time, and it's always great to be here in Toronto. It's a thrill to be here, and great event. Hope everybody's able to come up and enjoy it.
We hope everyone enjoys it, and we hope a Canadian driver wins.
All right, there we go. Jeff Atkinson, the president, Honda Indy Toronto here. Toronto, Ontario, as we are underway here in this afternoon practice session, Mark.
Yeah, of course, Green Savory, outstanding promoter, St. Pete for the series opener each and every year. Ownership of the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. And we're thrilled. We're thrilled with the announcement that they would be the lead promoters for the race in Portland. We're thrilled to get back there.
I'm excited to go to Portland. I think that Labor Day weekend event is going to be big. And I think, remember, we saw the return of the Verizon IndyCar Series to Road America, what that did for that particular region of the country. I think you're going to see it in the Pacific Northwest as well, Mark. There's a lot of rabid race fans up there, and it's been a while since we've had our style of racing up in Oregon.
Jim Aiello is from the Indianapolis Star, of course, motorsports writer, editor. Jim, thanks for joining us. Welcome to Toronto.
Thanks very much.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the post-mortem on Iowa. You had some extensive conversations with all of the principals involved, those that felt like there was some confusion at the end of the race with the caution and whatnot. You got IndyCar's perspective from it. Where do you think things stand now in terms of what happened the last 5 or 10 laps at Iowa Speedway?
Well, it's like what I wrote last week. It kind of depends on who you ask, right? But I think I would assume things have kind of blown over in the last week. But I can tell you that the Schmidt-Peterson guys weren't very pleased. It seemed like they said IndyCar kind of gave them the indication that the race was going to go back green. But when you talked to IndyCar, Jay Fry, Kyle Novak, they were saying, of course, they never guaranteed the race was going to go back green, just that was the intention. So some teams had to kind of take a guess, take a gamble, roll the dice on what coming back out or going into the pit for fresh tires. We saw that's what Robert Wickens did. We saw that's what Joseph Newgarden did. They had fresh tires in a couple laps to go after James Hinchcliffe. They might have caught him for the race win. That didn't happen. The race never resumed green, and they got pushed back to 4th and 5th because the couple of drivers behind them decided not to pit. Like I said, I talked to Robert Wickens. He said he was given every indication the race was going to go back green. He was pretty upset about it after the race. The Schmidt-Peterson Motorsport Management team was in to talk to IndyCar's officials to figure out what happened. They said that there was IndyCar officials told them there was some sort of glitch in the reordering system in terms of restarting the race, but like I said, in the story, IndyCar said, yeah, there was a glitch, but it had nothing to do with the end and didn't delay us at all. It was more about picking up the debris from the Ed Carpenter Takuma Sato incident. That was the problem. That's what caused us to delay in the race and why we couldn't go back green.
Saw Spencer Pigot with a wild ride off the final turn. He got a little bit too aggressive on the curbing and lost the balance of the race car. Was able to gather it back in and kind of went immediately onto pit road to kind of calm the nerves a little bit. It's interesting in terms of the timing of caution, because here we are with this discussion after Iowa, and yet you go back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway guy we had in the booth with us this morning, Jack Harvey, Oriol Serbiev, Steph Wilson. They kind of felt like that the things got picked up a little too quickly. On the other hand, that affected their race. So it's interesting always, and as you stated, I think very accurately, the perception or the opinion falls upon how successful you were or were not.
Yeah, and it's unfair a lot of the time. When you talk to these guys after the race, Robert Wickens, and even some of the team management guys, it's my job to go up to them and ask them questions immediately after the race. But they're still, they're still fiery, they're still upset, they still want to have, Robert Wickens. We don't need to go through them all, but man, that guy has been so close to a podium, so close to a win, and to have it kind of, I'm not gonna say taken away from him, because again, I think depends who you ask, but it was a team gamble to get him into the pit and to have him fall back to 5th, and he was, he really wanted to celebrate on top of the podium with James Hinchcliffe, his longtime, his best friend, and what a great story that would have been for them. And so he was very frustrated. So maybe he feels different now. I haven't got a chance to talk to him yet this weekend, But, just looking back, you could see where these guys can get kind of frustrated immediately after a tough break like that.
Well, good battery. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's we'll put a period on that story in just a minute. First, we need to welcome in our other pit reporter. He joins us for the Mazda Road to Indy. Happy to have Tony Laporta with us this weekend. Tony,
thanks so much, guys. Down here in the number 5 pit box with strategist Kyle Taylor. Obviously, coming off the win in Iowa, you guys have to be feeling good here on the pit stand. Talk to me first about where James's head is coming home here to Toronto.
He's in a great place. I said that in Iowa. I think it translated directly to what he did on track. And obviously, he loves coming home. He loves showing out for these fans. So he's in a really good spot. He's super busy, as you can imagine, but he's in a good place.
Just started this session. The car's back in right now. Specifically, can you talk to me what you guys here on the stand are looking for as far as development over this second practice session here today?
Yeah, we're just looking to optimize the car here before we start to do long runs. So we need to make sure that he's happy on the short run, and then we'll go from there. But right now, we're just trying to make sure the car's good.
And then finally, world-renowned spotter Chris Wheeler told me coming into this weekend that what you guys are going to be looking for is a solid platform for the car to operate from. Can you talk about that and what kind of platform you and James are looking for here before we go racing on Sunday?
Yeah, the platform's super important, right? It gives the driver comfort, allows him to do what he does. So we do everything we can every weekend to try to make sure that platform's sorted out. Our engineers have their hands cut out on a street course like this because it's so bumpy, but they do a pretty good job, and they're working at it right now.
All right, well, Taylor Kyle, you called the shots to the win in Iowa. Good luck this weekend in Toronto.
Thanks, Tony.
Taylor Kyle on the number 5 car feels optimistic heading into Toronto, guys.
I think Chris Wheeler has world renowned on his business card, does he not?
That's got to be it. That's got to be it. I've known Chris for a long time. He's
my neighbor. Doesn't live too far from the Speedway.
He spent a lot of time in the world of karting, of course, spots for a number of organizations, and of course also big with now running with Bell Racing USA, brand new shop at Speedway.
Yeah, they've got a neat facility on Main Street in Speedway. So Jim, but the kind of the comment I was going to put to tie ribbon on all this is that I think it's important for race control. Jay Fry stepped up almost immediately and issued a statement in support of the decision that was made, explaining it, and was front and center. I think total transparency on his part, and I think for the guys in race control, it looks really good when the boss comes out in their support. Having coached and been in that situation in education, it's nice to see when you have that upper level support for sure.
Absolutely. I'm sure Kyle Novak felt very good about having that kind of support from Jay Fry. What I wanted to add to that, and I agree with your comments, is that I don't think there are a lot of professional sports where you're going to get the director of competition and the head of race control, and you're going to get them in a room and they're going to say, listen, I know everybody's talking about this ending. We need to tell you what happened. Here's what happened. We don't want our fans confused. We don't want anybody confused. This is what we saw. This is why we called the way we did. We wanted to go green. We couldn't do it. I give a lot of credit to them for, disagree with their decision. Don't like the way the race ended in Iowa. Fine. But at least they came out and said, this is it. This is what we tried to do. This is why it didn't happen. So you got to give them credit for that.
Hey, now, on another topic, we talk about the silly season typically involving drivers. Since I guess dust is all but settled on McLaren, at least for now, the schedule is turning to announcements involving scheduling all of a sudden. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. We do want to revisit the issue from earlier this week that cropped up. Connor Daly is in the 88 this weekend for Harding Racing. Gabby Chavez stepped out of the cockpit. Harding says they're still committed to him. Let's find out more from Gabby Chavez himself. He's on pit road with our Jake Query.
Harding had said that this was an opportunity to find out who could be the teammate for Gabby Chavez coming up in 2019, but it means that Gabby Chavez surrenders the 88 seat perhaps temporarily. First off, Gabby, take me through this past week. You've been through this before to an extent, but what was the emotion and what was explained to you?
We kind of knew that where we are now, we're not really in any contention for any points battle in the championship. For the past few races, or the past 2 races, there's an engineering switch, and since then we've kind of really turned our focus over to 2019. So this was, I guess, the next logical step was let's bring in a teammate or try to start looking for potential teammates. And obviously a better cost-effective way to do it is, by sharing the car. And although it's not ideal for me, I think, if I look at the bigger picture here with trying to be better for next year, which is certainly where we want to, when we really want to turn up the heat, it seems like a logical thing to do. And do my part in trying to help the team, and so far it looks like Connor's doing a great job, so hopefully we can get some more valuable info and a different perspective.
Very slight contact for Ryan Hunter-Reay. We'll see if he brings that DHL machine onto pit road. We're talking with Gabby Chavez. Gabby, I would think it's got to be difficult, though. You want to be a good soldier. You want to be a good teammate. But at the same time, you're also a competitor. How difficult is it?
Yeah, I mean, as a driver, anytime you're watching, the cars from the sidelines, it's always a hard day. So, yeah, there's no denying that. But it's a bit of a different situation. Usually, if you're in the sidelines, that usually means you don't have a job. You're not really driving for anyone. Here it's different, nothing's changed for me as far as my stand and my status with the team, it's a bit of a different situation. Nothing that I've ever experienced before, but trying to be a good team player here and understand that we're looking at the bigger picture for next year and do my part if I can help at all.
Lastly, let me just ask to kind of put a stamp on it. Do you have any doubt in your mind that you are with Harding Racing next year?
No, not at all. I mean, contractually and from every single conversation we've had, this team is trying to grow, and I've got my spot here for next year.
Appreciate it, Gabby. We'll let you get back up on the stand.
Thank you.
Gabby Chavez, of course, the driver of the number 88 machine for Harding Racing, but not this weekend. Connor Daly will be filling in here in Toronto, and Gabby standing alongside with Al Unser Jr., Brian Barnhart on the headsets, working with Connor, as Connor's now out on the streets of Toronto.
Right answers for sure, Rob Howden from Gabby Chavez.
Most definitely. It's a tough situation. Of course, a brand new team, and I think you have to look back at 2017 and how great that Gabby did for that young squad when they ran the 3 oval races. They're a brand new team. Nick and I were talking a little bit about Carlin Racing during the Indy Lights practice session about the fact that they're starting a new operation. And at least they're a 2-car team. And, of course, they have all that experience from being here in Indy Lights and running globally as well. For Harding Racing, single car, building a team from the ground up, that's tough. And then you also got to look to the fact that I know Jim could speak of this as well, but they made an engineering change heading into Iowa, bringing Gerald Taller in. So, that's a team that continues to try to find their place and try to find a couple of good results.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just I think a lot of people get anxious when you get halfway through a season and you want to start seeing good results, and then there's a lot of pressure to start putting those good results up. So, like you said, though, it's year one. You look around the paddock, you see Andretti, Penske, Ganassi, Schmidt-Peterson, Rahal. I mean, you're talking about some of these teams that have invested a ton of money and a ton of time and decades of energy into this series. So, for a Harding team to come in year, I guess, 1.5, Carlin in 1 year, and to try to post top 10 results, that's a big, tall order for them, a big ask.
And when you're a successful businessman like Mike Harding, your expectations may be a little higher. How many times do we talk about Firestone Fast 6 and guys trying to make the Fast 12 and they're thousandths of a second off? That's what the difference is in this series. These guys have been running 15th, 16th, 17th in a series where really that's still a pretty good result because it's so tough in this program.
Well, the president, Brian Barnhart, told me that, when they first started looking at the former at Carpenter Racing Shop on Main Street Speedway, he told Mike Harding flat out, he said, we don't need this now. He said, well, if the goal is to eventually get to 2 cars within the next couple of years, when we are ready to make that move to 2 cars, this place isn't going to be available, so we better do it now. So that gives you an idea of what his level of commitment is like. Ryan Hunter-Reay, another practice session, another visit to the wall that resulted in that flat right front that we told you about. Tony was there when he brought it back to pit road.
Yeah, guys, a frustrating Friday continues here in Toronto for Ryan Hunter-Reay. The car is getting buttoned back up right now. They put a set of sticker red option tires on the 28 car, but they took the right front tire off the car and slammed it down on the pavement. You could see almost nearly half of the steel rim was peeled back. The tire completely deviated. He knocked it right off when he made contact with the wall. But RHR in the car, red option tires on. They're doing a little bit of adjustments. Now they've taken the rear cover off. They're doing a few adjustments to the back end of that car. But Ryan Hunter-Reay ready to go back out here after making contact with the right front tire early in session number 2.
And again, we want to get back to our conversations about the schedule, and we will do that when we come back to the streets of Toronto.
Firestone presents legendary drives, super speedways, short ovals, dry tracks, wet tracks, concrete or asphalt. The IndyCar Series is the ultimate test for a driver. And being a driver that can adapt to anything means having a tire that can do the same. That's why we build Firestone tires to handle it all. Because if they can endure all that, well, you can bet they'll bring you to victory every day. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone, the tire that drives IndyCar legends.
Plan your racing road trip to St. Louis for Verizon IndyCar Series weekend at Gateway Motorsports Park. Coors Light Pole Night on Friday features qualifying in the first ever appearance by the NASCAR K&N Pro Series. Saturday is action-packed all day long with the Rumble Before the Roar pre-race party and the amazing Bommarito Automotive Group 500. Get your tickets now at GatewayMSP.com. August 24th and 25th. Brought to you in part by the Illinois Sub-Tourism and the Office of Illinois Tourism. The last oval race of 2018 will be incredible. The party at Gateway will be spectacular.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Toronto, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
So talking about the 2019 schedule, we already know ISM Raceway in Phoenix will not be back. WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, formerly Mazda Raceway, says on Twitter today, stay tuned for a blockbuster announcement on Tuesday at 2 p.m. At WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, following the anticipated approval of Monterey County Board of Supervisors. IndyCar will return to Monterey in 2019. And Jim Aiello, that brought a swift response from Steve Page at Sonoma Raceway, saying that they've invested heavily to build IndyCar's brand and following in Northern California over the last 14 years and would be happy to continue that effort, but only under a sustainable business model. If the series determines their long-term interests are better served by moving the Sonoma race to another venue, that is a business decision they're obviously entitled to make, and we will turn our attention to other opportunities. Adam Stern among those reporting that on social media today. Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, but you can understand where Sonoma's coming from on this. If you have two races in the same area, you might be pulling from the same audience, and you can understand where Sonoma might be a little hesitant about that. We've kind of run into this issue when we talked about Texas. Teddy Gossage said he wanted no part of IndyCar racing at COTA because he doesn't want any, even if, I think he said if it even pulls one fan away from Texas Motor Speedway, doesn't want that to happen. So you can understand where Sonoma Raceway might be hesitant to come back if they're going to be racing. I think it's something like 150 miles just north of them, if I'm getting my geography correct.
That's a fine line to walk when you are, if those promoters and track presidents are drawing lines in the sand for a series, that's a fine line you have to walk.
It's tough for IndyCar and for Mark Miles to negotiate these things, especially when you're trying to negotiate in tandem a new TV deal. You're trying to figure out which 8 races are going to be on network TV, trying to sell which races can be on network TV based on what NBC's schedule is, and then you're trying to negotiate what can also be the finale. So, we now get to speculate as to where Laguna Seca will land on the calendar. It could end up taking Phoenix's spot. We don't know because you don't yet have a replacement for Phoenix, and then maybe that pushes Gateway to the finale and replaces Sonoma. So there's a lot of speculation about Gateway getting moved to the finale anyway, but obviously nothing confirmed in that regard. But we're going to get a little. It's a silly season, so we're going to get a lot of a little shuffle, a little shake up here. In the schedule.
Drivers were talking. As we said, we're talking about scheduling. I know the folks at Iowa Speedway. They have said that it's just a matter of a couple of T's getting crossed and a couple of I's being dotted. They're looking to renew, and their brand new president said on IndyCar Radio last week, look, this was the first series that believed in Iowa Speedway, and it makes sense for us to continue this relationship. But, oh, by the way, he said, I really like the way those cars look under the lights.
Jay Fry said the same thing when I got a chance to talk to him and said, we're going to work real hard to come back to Saturday night. I don't know of any IndyCar fan who doesn't like a little night racing, so I think that's a great idea for them. Not to say that the crowd wasn't pretty great. There wasn't an enormous at Iowa, but it was a pretty decent crowd, and I think they could probably do better at night.
David Hyatt's a longtime radio guy, headed up MRN for years, Motor Racing Network. So being a radio guy, he's just naturally smarter, isn't he, Jim? Don't you think? Wouldn't you agree with that, Jim?
Of course.
Rob Houghton, we're watching Joseph Newgarden, defending series champion. These drivers attacking the curbing here at Toronto with mixed results, we might say.
One of the things I love about Toronto is I think you have to attack this racetrack. We'll talk a little bit about the fact that they made some changes, putting that new pavement down, essentially all the way down the front straightaway into turn number 1. And all the Mazda Road Indy events we've seen so far, the drivers have told me that they're pushing 50 to 100 yards deeper on the braking zone. I'd like to get some feedback from the IndyCar guys as well, but turn 5 is one of the corners that they just pound over that curbing. And we've seen a lot of issues, and Jim can see it as well, I think, a lot of issues coming into turn number 8. There are some significant bumps when they're trying to transition through there, and we've watched these guys on the wheel on board. We're watching here with I believe Wickens. No, that's actually James Hinchcliffe, sawing on the wheel coming through those corners, that 8, 9, 10 complex there. And we saw Spencer Pigot have issues as well. The car kind of starts to oversteer on the entry. As soon as it touches the pavement, or rather the concrete, it pushes through, and they grab it. You get that exit oversteer coming out when the grip returns. It's a challenging racetrack, and you have to attack it to lay down a fast lap.
An update from pit road with Jake Query.
My apologies if you guys had touched on this earlier, Mark, but I just simply wanted to pass along the information in terms of the tires. And, of course, here, as we've talked about, so many different rubber compounds. Rob, you can expand on this just a little bit, but there is so much different rubber that is laid down by the different series that are running this circuit this particular weekend in the streets of Toronto. But you get asphalt, you get concrete, you get pavement. There's all kinds of different things that are wearing on those Firestone Firehawks. Firestone has distributed for each team for the weekend 7 sets of the primary black tires. Each team also gets 4 sets of the softer compound red ring tires. Those tires, when you use them, don't last as long, but they are immediately kind of broken in when you go out onto the track, so they give you a little bit more speed in terms of the instant gratification from them once you pull them off onto pit road. But the other thing that's interesting per IndyCar rules, this is the same everywhere we go, and that is that all teams must turn in 1 set of each after today. So after today, it will be 6 sets of the black tires, 3 sets of the Firestone softer compound red tires. And Mark, that is, of course, regardless of whether or not they had used those reds or not. They still have to turn a set in at the end of this day today.
We have an issue on courses. That's the 15 of Graham Rahal. Is that off of the final turn?
Yeah,
it's off the front straightaway. Turn coming down the front straightaway. And Ryan Hunter-Reay also in the runoff area, resulting in a red flag condition. Now, both cars able to get back underway under their own power. And I think, Rob, what we're seeing on full display here is just a ragged edge, trying to squeeze everything that you can squeeze out of it. Granted, you have a practice session, but I think we're getting to the point now where they're looking for qualifying sims. And boy, look at the rear end grip on that car just go away for Graham Rahal.
Here's a great in-car here of Graham just coming out. You can see him losing the back of that car coming through turn number 11, and that's just a corner. They come off that off-camber right-hand turn number 10. They're getting back on the throttle and trying to get that power back down, and that they've opened that corner up, I think, just a little bit this year. We saw him just narrowly miss the wall. We actually had drivers in both USF 2000 and Pro Mazda aggressively hammer that wall and damage the right rear. Luckily for Graham Rahal, able to bring it back around and into pit lane, but that was close to having a pretty solid wreck coming out of turn 11.
We've seen since the new configuration where they switched the pit road around and whatnot, this is not the first driver to have an issue with that final turn. We've seen a couple, in fact, today already.
Interestingly, that in the first year we had it, it was more drivers coming through and plowing into it with the right front as opposed to these guys rolling back on the power and seeing guys spin around.
We caught up with Zach Veach shortly after the practice session, and he was describing a lap around this place, and Zach even said that those final 3 or 4 turns now under this configuration, he says, it might be as difficult as a grouping of turns as you'll see anywhere on the IndyCar Series schedule.
I had said that when we were talking about the Indy Lights. I said the same thing on the PA talking about Pro Mazda. I think that 9, 10, 11 complex, because it's very, very rough, it's hard to get the rubber down there if there's an off-camber corner, and for all intents and purposes, there's absolutely zero visibility. You're going through a full tunnel there. You can't see forward. And you've got to roll that power on. That's what we saw with Rahal, just getting on that power a little too much. The car probably pushing a little bit, got a little snap loose when he got back on power. That is a tough part of this racetrack, and that's what leads down into turn number 1. You have to get that right if you want to overtake in turn 1.
Jim, I've often stated that the champion of this series is a true champion because of the versatility. And we look no further than the last 7 or 8 days or so. I mean, can you imagine for these drivers of these teams to turn around and the challenge? Because absolutely nothing transitions from Iowa Speedway to do the streets here at Toronto, Jim. It's incredible turnaround. Two vastly different styles and disciplines of racing.
It's fantastic. I was just kind of marveling actually at Takuma Sato's recent run here, just because we've done those kind of we've jumped from Elkhart Lake, which is a 4-mile track, to Iowa, which is the less than a mile track, to this one, and he's actually had a lot of success recently. He's got I think 4 top 7 finishes in his last 5 races, and they've come on a road course, a street course, super speedway, and a short oval. So you can see that kind of coming together for Takuma Sato. But in general, like you said, you're seeing guys like, even a guy like Scott Dixon had a kind of a rough go of it at Iowa Speedway, and I just think that I'm not Scott's almost outside top 10 finish for Scott is one of the rarest things you can see in IndyCar, but you can see how tough it is to transition from race to race to race, and the guys that can put up those top 5, top 6 finishes like Scott almost always does at every track, I mean, that's just the most impressive thing to do.
That's why this is my favorite part of the schedule. I love the fact that we go to that natural terrain circuit at Road America. Then we throw them onto the oval, the 7th, 8th mile oval at Iowa. Then we come to the street circuit here. This just totally gives you the cross-section of what we have in IndyCar. And if you can be successful at all 3 of them, that's a diversity that I think we always have to tout with IndyCar. You have to be fast in all these different disciplines.
There's no other way, like you said, there's no other way to be champion. If you can only be good on ovals, you can only be good on street and road courses, that's not going to work for you. So, and then you said this part of the schedule is perhaps the biggest test outside of that crazy month of May where you're good, you're exhausted, but in terms of diversity, there's no better part of the schedule.
Well, Scott Dixon, you talk about him currently P2, statistically certainly already one of the greats of all time. And Jim, let's face it, he started winning races, I think, when he was 13 years old in the IndyCar Series. Seemingly, he's been around that long. More like 18, we should say. But Scott Dixon's still a fairly young man. I mean, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 good years left there, especially with the lineup that they put together on both sides of the wall, including Scott Dixon at Ganassi Racing.
I wrote after his win at Texas, I just don't know if there's any words to use to describe Scott Dixon anymore, any superlatives anymore. It all just seems silly at this point. You just say Scott Dixon, and I think that greatness kind of becomes inherent now when you say his name. You expect certain results at certain places. You don't really have to qualify it with, excellent or great or superstar or anything like that. Those are all just things you assume now with Scott Dixon. And it's going to be fun to kind of watch him to see how long he sticks around. I don't think he's anywhere near retirement, especially his mindset right now. He just wants to keep chasing championships and Indy 500s. And it's just going to be fun to kind of see which records he can chase down. We know he just passed Michael Andretti on the all-time wins list. And so it'll be fun to see if, I don't know if he'll ever catch Foyt, but it'll be fun to see him try.
Well, he's mentioned in that conversation with AJ and with Mario. Well, certainly motorsports changed over that period of time throughout the careers of them, and they were able to adapt. But I'll tell you what, over the last 20 years or so that he has been doing what he's doing, I mean, stop and think about how much open-wheel racing has changed, various chassis, different engine manufacturers. Certainly the driver roster has totally and completely changed, and yet there's Ganassi Racing and there's Scott Dixon.
That's what I think Ryan Hunter-Reay was saying that at Detroit. He was just saying, you think about the competition of this series and how much everything has changed just since Ryan and Scott have been racing against each other, and to see him in a series where most guys can't, you don't see guys rattle off 7, 8, 9 wins in a row in a season. You see Scott Dixon win 3, 4, 5 races per season every year. Last year was the first time, and I can't remember how long, I think it was 11 or 12 years, he didn't win multiple races. He's already back to do that. He's already won a couple this year. So, no, it's just been kind of incredible, the consistency that he's been able to maintain over the course of his career.
And those top 3s and top 5s when he doesn't have a car key.
That's how you win a championship, right? That's when you bring home the result you need, just putting those points up. I think one of the unique aspects of Scott, and it's maybe not so much unique, but here's a guy that not only is he one of the guys that every young kid tries to emulate on the racetrack, but you look at the way he kind of takes care of himself and the way he presents himself off the racetrack as well. I don't think anybody works out as hard as Scott Dixon does, and there's why you're winning championships, because he's at pit fit every day with he and Jim Leo hammering it down. This is a guy that is committed to this program, knowing that it's not only being fast on the racetrack, but you got to bring as a driver everything you possibly can.
Yeah, talking to Jim Leo about that, it was funny. We were talking about some of the pit fit records they set on some of those different machines, and you're expecting some of the young guys to be the ones who've done the most. And Scott's got the record here. He's got the record here. He's got the record here. And if he doesn't have the record, he wants to come back and make sure he's got the record. I mean, there is probably no more competitive guy in the series than Scott Dixon, and that on and off the track.
Graham Rahal is 9th quick as we're about 30 minutes into this 45-minute session now, but he spun coming off the final turn, headed back to pit road almost right away, and Jake Query is there.
And the good news is Graham Rahal is already back out, and that's not to say, Mark, that it didn't come with a once-over of that number 15 machine. Graham Rahal brought it in. What they did do was make an adjustment to the springs and the balance in the front of the machine, but it didn't appear as though, as they gave it a very thorough examination, there was any sort of body or structural damage to that machine. They did go ahead and put on a set of the softer red compound tires, so Rahal on a sticker set, but keep in mind, you got to go through one of those essentially anyway in this session. So they did make an adjustment again to the springs and balance front of the machine, but everything else looked okay as Graham Rahal went back out.
Rob Howden, a busy weekend for the Mazda Road to Indy. Let's highlight all the activity with the ladder series that feeds into the Verizon IndyCar series.
Yeah, we had Indy Lights by themselves at Iowa Speedway, so it's always great to get everybody back together. All three rungs of the Mazda Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires on the docket here this weekend. USF 2000, Pro Mazda, and Indy Lights. USF 2000 drivers got a practice and a qualifying session in today. Kyle Kirkwood was actually on top at the end, but he received a penalty for too quick and through a yellow flag. He gets dropped a couple of spots, as did the rookie Rasmus Lint. Dakota Dickerson finds himself on the pole for Arms Up Motorsports, the young driver out of San Diego. They've got another qualifying run still to come tomorrow in 2 races. In the Pro Mazda category, Parker Thompson comes in as the point leader. Rinus VK, though, with the quickest lap time in qualifying. And as he turned the quick lap time, he's the one of the guys that got into the wall coming out of turn 11, just hammered the right rear. But he was able to limp it off through the Princess Gates and actually was able to hold on to the spot. Didn't cause a red flag, so didn't lose his fast lap. They're back on the racetrack in a couple hours here. Actually, less than a couple hours, I think in about an hour. Back on track for their second qualifying run. And again, they'll have 2 races this weekend. And, of course, we watched Victor Franzoni, quickest in Indy Lights. It's going to be one of the things about Indy Lights that we really liked was the top 3 guys, 3 different teams, which is exciting. Victor Franzoni, of course, for Juncos Racing, Santiago Urrutia from Velarde Auto Racing, and Pato Award for Andretti Autosport.
Watching Graham Rahal attack the curbing. Looked like he's got a qualifying similar way. We see him pretty aggressive now with the left sides into turn number 5. And, some places, let's face it, the curbing's very unforgiving, but they're going to push the limit each and every opportunity they get, trying to make that track as wide as they can possibly make it in areas where maybe they shouldn't. And it will bite some of them, most assuredly.
It's because you have to here. You just have to attack it. I think that if you take any laps off, if you try to take a session off, it's going to bite you. You have to constantly be pushing 100%. You can see Graham right where he almost got into the wall. He tries it again. He's pushing as hard as he possibly can. The car again got a little light on him coming through turn number 11. But you cannot take a lap off in this series.
For those of you clamoring for the Viking Anders Krone, fret not. He's a little busy doing other things today, but we will certainly have Anders back in the booth with us tomorrow. Lights race number 1. He'll join Nick Yeoman and then be with me for qualifying at 1:55 Eastern. So worry not, Anders Krone.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
And Sunday for sure.
And one of the interesting things that I heard when I was in the paddock earlier was the fact that James Hinchcliffe was talking with Parker Thompson. Of course, Parker here is the Canadian, comes in as the point leader. He's won his last 3 races here, 3 USF 2000 races in a row. It's a big weekend for Parker, of course. Now, in talking with James, he was chatting kind of about what you do here, how much emphasis is put on, how TV interviews. There's been a lot of asks for Parker Thompson. Well, you look at James Hinchcliffe and kind of what he's been able to do with his friend Robert Wickens, how he's kind of helped him, brought him in here, the level of contact they have, the communication. He's helped Robbie out a ton this year, and of course Robbie's shown extremely well. This particular weekend, I think James may be able to help Robbie even a little bit more. Number one, kind of spreading out the pressure of being Canadian. But in James talking to Parker, he said one of the things that he did early on that really exhausted James when he was here early, when he first came, and it was that Canadian hope, was he never said no to an interview, never said no to a TV interview, whatever it was, and he absolutely just burned himself out.
Right.
He would have to go hide. I remember being with him when he was hiding in the motorhome because it was just too much early on. And that's one of the things he said to Parker. At your stage in Pro Mazda, you can't say no to anything. Luckily, we're able to maybe pick and choose a little more now, but that's something I think he'll be able to help Wickens with, because, of course, Robbie's first event here, first time, the Canadians all clamoring, as you said, to try to get some time with them in the autograph session, but Robbie's going to be able to look to James and try to help kind of how to guide himself through a home race weekend.
And sometimes lessons learned have nothing to do with what goes on in the cockpit.
That's exactly it, right? And it's off the racetrack. It's what you do for your team. It's what you do for your sponsors, and that's what makes James and Graham Rahal's another guy. They're so valuable to IndyCar because of what they bring to the table.
Takuma Sato, fresh off a podium finish at Iowa Speedway, appears to have hit a bit of a stride. He is P1 in this session. Marco, Dixon, Pickett staying hot. Graham Rahal, the top 5. Hinch, Pagano, Jones, Wickens, and Hunter-Reay, the top 10. As practice continues here on the streets of Toronto.
Firestone presents Legendary Drives. The scariest thing in sports is a left turn taken at over 220 miles an hour. Turn 1 at the Indy 500 demands everything a tire's got, putting 2.5 Gs on them for 4 seconds. Once it's over, they only have to do it 199 more times. And if Firestone tires are so dependable they can handle turn 1, they'll handle any turn you need to make. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone, the tire that drives IndyCar legends.
Plan your racing road trip to St. Louis for Verizon IndyCar Series weekend at Gateway Motorsports Park. Coors Light Pole Night on Friday features qualifying in the first ever appearance by the NASCAR K&N Pro Series. Saturday is action-packed all day long with the Rumble Before the Roar pre-race party and the amazing Bommarito Automotive Group 500. Get your tickets now at GatewayMSP.com. August 24th and 25th. Brought to you in part by the Illinois Self-Tourism and the Office of Illinois Tourism. The last oval race of 2018 will be incredible. The party at Gateway will be spectacular.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Toronto, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Watching Will Power keep the wall painters busy here on the streets of Toronto. He visits it with the left side, and we're getting a good look at that Firestone alternate red with all of the lettering scraped off of it, and the crew is looking at the left side of that race car, and been some frequent visitors, or been visited frequently, has the outside wall here at Toronto.
Well, one of those terms they say you don't know where the edge is until you go over it.
Right.
And I think that's what these guys are doing. They're pressing as hard as they possibly can. They're finding the grip levels. And you'll see a couple of them try the inside line coming down into turn number 3 as well. That's the prime overtaking opportunity here in Toronto. You got to try that line to the inside. And we always see that in the race, do we not? The grip level's on the outside, not on the inside. That makes things exciting at the very start. You go back to last year, the contact between, I believe it was Scott Dixon and Will Power, took Will out early. That big run down into turn number 3 to start the race on Sunday. That'll be the most excitement we get in the first couple of laps. It'll be a thrill to see what happens down in 3.
Jim Aiello, the chase for the championship, no one seems to want to put a stranglehold on it. You happy with the parity that we've seen as a result of the aero kits here in 2018?
I think you have to be, like I said, I still think we're seeing some of the top teams at leading the way, but that's not a surprise, right? I mean, that was going to happen regardless of new aero kits or not, I think. But no, I think it's been interesting. We saw at Iowa, I really thought, man, Joseph Newgarden, and I wrote this, but man, that guy's writing the script perfectly right now. He's going to lead this way. He's going to finish the race in first, and everybody else is going to finish 10th or worse, and it's going to be terrible, and he'll jump all terrible for everybody, great for him as he jumps up the standings. And then, all of a sudden, Hinchcliffe gets a rocket ship and goes past him. Power is able to recover from whatever happened to him early in the race. Rossi recovers from a bad pit stop. Dixon, salvages with the top 12, and then we had Ryan Hunter-Reay. He did have a bad race, but didn't really fall that far back in the championship. So really, Iowa was kind of like a mulligan for a lot of these guys. The championship is just about as close as it was coming out of Elkhart Lake. However, going into this race, I don't know how many mulligans you're going to have left. If you have one of those bad races like we saw some of these guys have, that might be enough to kind of dampen your championship hopes.
Would you already be on an island somewhere and in retirement, Jim, had you put money on a podium of Sato, Pickett, and James Hinchcliffe?
I don't have enough money that would have been the case. I would have had to keep working, but yes, that would have been a significant payoff, I think. I mean, that has a stat I had at one point. I wish I could remember it, but it's only happened, I think, twice this year, and didn't happen at all last year, that we didn't see a Team Penske car or a Scott Dixon in the top 3. Wow. So pretty rare for what we saw at Iowa.
That's a cool podium, though. Really, it was, Rob. I mean, that's kind of stuff you love to see.
Well, you know what? We've followed Spencer Pickett, of course, through the whole road to Indy. He was stellar, winning the championship at Indy Lights. And how many times has he had a great race car, an Indy car, only to get a flat tire, or only to, I think he lost the brakes at one point, or get caught out by a yellow? He just needed that podium. He needed a result. It was going to be a good result regardless if the guys didn't come into pit and end up dropping down a couple of spots. But for Spencer Pickett to get up there and get the job done, I know it took a lot of weight off his shoulders. We talked at the end of the race, and the look on his face, there was that smile that we haven't seen for a while out of Spencer Pigot because he needed that result. He wanted to bring something. And when I interviewed him right afterwards, the first guy there didn't even take his helmet off, Ed Carpenter. I love to see that.
Yeah, but we'll power into the runoff area in turn number 1. Rob, that's going to be interesting on race day to watch turn 1 unfold. Fresh asphalt laid down on the front straightaway.
I think that's the biggest storyline we need to talk about with the racetrack itself. They continue to make updates on the track. They laid some pavement down last year. They've been working on that 9, 10, 11 complex, but I think the new asphalt coming down into turn number 1, anytime we saw guys coming in hard, you could see the car, there's a little bump coming in, the rear end starts to step out a little bit. They're going to have to get a feel for the shorter braking zone. They're braking deeper than they would before, but they still got to roll enough corner speed over top of that concrete patch.
The schedule for tomorrow is a busy one. Why not join us for breakfast, 8:35 Eastern? We'll have qualifying for Indy Lights race number 1. Nick will be in the booth with Rob Howden. And then the final IndyCar practice session before we go qualifying. Nick will join me in the booth for that. And then Indy Lights race number 1. Nick Yeoman, Anders Krohn on the call for the booth. Jay Query out on the course, along with yours truly. Rob Howden and Tony Laporta will be down on pit road for that. Then we'll go IndyCar qualifying. Anders Krohn will join us in the booth for that. We'll have guys out on the course. Nick will take my place in 5-6. And have our same stable of pit reporters. Busy day on Sunday. Indy Lights qualifying at 9:05 Eastern Sunday morning. Final warm-up session for the IndyCar Series at 11:40 Eastern. And then flag-to-flag coverage of Lights race number 2 at 12:25. And then the IndyCar race, of course, here on the streets of Toronto, 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll have all the pre-race festivities and plenty of driver interviews for you. And several other series here, as we mentioned, the Mazda Road to Indy, a couple of sports car classes here. A busy, busy weekend here. Busy weekend for Spencer Pigot as the checkered flies. We see Ed Jones get sideways right at the timing line. Pigot on the podium last week in Iowa, Jake, 6th quick after this session.
All of a sudden, things coming together for Spencer Pigot. We've said that about a number of drivers, it seems, here, but this is the time of year when you really want to get it rolling. First off, Spencer, let's talk about just the week itself. You want to obviously be able to celebrate a little bit getting that podium, but yet you got to turn around. You got another race weekend. Was it difficult to kind of balance that?
No, not really, because it seems like that's what IndyCar schedule is always like. It's super intense throughout the summer, so obviously not much time between the 2 races, but it's kind of what we're used to, and we just want to kind of build off that. So far today we struggled a little bit this morning, found some speed this afternoon, so I think we ended up 6th and fastest Chevy, so that's definitely bodes well for us, and we're pleased with the preferred freezer car so far.
What's the key at this track? I mean, where is the area where you can try to find some speed, or where is the area that if you're not careful is going to bite you?
I think it can bite you at a lot of places, but for me, I think you just have to hustle around here. There's not really any corners where you can be smooth and try to be super precise. You just kind of have to throw it around a little bit, muscle the car around, and obviously it's tricky because there's no room for error.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Jake.
Spencer Pigot again finished 2nd in Iowa, now finds himself 6th in terms of this practice session. One session does not a weekend make, but a good start so far for Spencer Pigot in that 21 machine.
Outstanding job covering motorsports for the Indianapolis Star, Jim Aiello. So, Jim, any unsubstantiated rumors, anything you're making up you're going to throw in your column this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to be filling in for in the Harding 88 car next week in Mid-Ohio.
Okay.
It's going to be a precarious debut for me, but I think I can handle it. Get a couple practice sessions in, and I'll be all right.
Any testing in advance of that, Jim, or are they just going to throw you in there and turn you loose?
I told them, no, I don't need any of it. Just throw me in there. I'll be fine.
I understand. We expect good things from you in that regard, but let folks know in the interim where they can find you on social media and online.
It's at Jim Aiello on Twitter, at Jim Aiello on Facebook as well, and then IndyStar.com and USATodaySports.com.
Great stuff as always. We appreciate it. We will have you back very, very soon for sure. So Rob Howden, Takuma Sato, and even Spencer Pigot, they haven't skipped a beat. Looks like they're hitting the stride.
When you have the momentum in the middle of the season and your drivers start to believe in you and everything starts working, you've asked a couple of drivers, is that something, is that real, that you just feel things are working? And they'll say most definitely. If there's confidence and momentum, that's what those 2 drivers have. When you can come back off of a great podium at Iowa, on the oval, no less, get here to the streets of Toronto and come out of the box quickly on Friday, that always plays well for Saturday and Sunday.
Sato turns just a handful of laps, 17 in this session. In fact, he was P2. Dixon quickest. Andretti was third quick. Ray Hall, Rossi, Piggott, Newgarden, Hunter Ray, Bourdais, and Hinchcliffe, the top 10. Again, don't forget, Lights qualifying tomorrow at 8:35. The next IndyCar session, 9:50 Eastern tomorrow before we go qualifying at 1:55 Eastern. Great job by Tony Laporta joining us this weekend. We appreciate him doing so. This came together very late. Very fortunate to have Tony with us this weekend. He'll be with us tomorrow and Sunday as well. The great stuff from Jay Query, as always. Want to thank Jim Aiello and Rob Howden for joining us in the broadcast booth. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levitt. On-site engineering and production by Rick Evans. I'm Mark James. So long for now from the streets of Toronto.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
White flag is in the hands of Paul Blevins. He's waiting to see Alexander Rossi come out of turn number 4. Tom Hansing is in the stand with him, but there he goes. And Danny, he may be out of fuel. Banky very slow at turn 1.
He is indeed. It doesn't sound like he's overpowered.
Very, very busy completion to the day for the Pro Mazda Series. That championship presented by Cooper Tires. They have been extremely busy. Kicked off the day this morning at 8 a.m. Then they had a qualifying session earlier in the afternoon, and now qualifying for race number 2. We'll be joined momentarily by the voice of this Mazda Road to Indy program, Mr. Rob Howden, after a busy day on the radio and with us here in the public address booth. Getting set for his final duties with us here today in the public address system. Watching the EMR safety crew doing a little track maintenance to the entrance of turn number 3. Doesn't look to be a deal. Getting the track cleaned up. And we will get set to go qualifying here momentarily for race number 2, which will happen on Sunday for the Pro Mazda Series. Now, Rob Howden having a seat. Engines are fired. Qualifications have begun. I don't know if we would like to touch upon this yet before it gets too far removed. But we'll let Rinus VK and the rest of the Pro Mazda drivers begin their outlap as qualifying has begun. This will be a 20-minute session, identical to the session they had earlier today. We will find out the starting lineup for race number 2. Now, just a couple of hours ago, we saw qualifying for the USF 2000 Series and what looked like a big day for Kyle Kirkwood, but we understand that things may have changed.
Yeah, I got a text about that Kyle Kirkwood and Rasmus Lint, I believe, both getting penalized for being too fast under a yellow flag area, and that moves Dakota Dickerson to P1.
Wow.
Pretty impressive. Here's Dakota coming back after having not run for a full season here, doing some F4 racing. In fact, leads the F4 points here in the U.S. But, man, looking really good with Arms Up Motorsports and the Soul Red number 9 machine. Dakota, of course, one of the Mazda scholarship drivers a couple of years ago. We'll start on the pole position.
So for Lint and for, who said Lint and for Kyle Kirkwood,
point leader.
How far did they stumble?
To be honest, I haven't been back to the paddock yet. I've been doing session after session. I did the Indy Lights session with Nick Yeoman and was able to sit in with Mark James for the IndyCar session. So I'm not really sure what the potential of the full damage is yet. We're going to find out whether it's 3 spots, 5 second, or loss of fast laps. That could be what it is.
So they've got Igor Fraga, Lucas Cole back in the back. No, not sure how far Lint and Kirkwood have fallen and tumbled down that starting line. It's going to be a whale of a race tomorrow.
Be ready for that one. We got some great racing midway through the day. The full Mazda Road to Indy on display right around the noon hour. Rinus VK was on the pole position, will be on the pole position for race number 1. He was able to score the fast lap, lay it down there right at the very end of our first qualifying session earlier today for Pro Mazda. But Michael, he was one of those guys that have kind of identified a tricky part of this racetrack. Graham Rahal did it as well in the IndyCar session when he spun coming out of turn 11. Our drivers in USF 2000 both, and Pro Mazda, Igor Fraga and Rinus VK, though, significant damage as they tapped the right rear, hammered it pretty hard coming out of that corner. Graham able to just miss it. So Rinus VK, they took the car back, got it repaired. He was able to get off the racetrack so as not to bring out the red flag, which, again, would have robbed him of his fast lap.
But that did happen to Igor Fraga, but that was because it was in the first part of the session for Rinus VK. Lucky we were at the end of the session, and they didn't have to throw the red flag.
And Fraga was able to get off the racetrack, but he was essentially blocking the runoff area, and we can't have that. We got to throw the red.
So for this session, and maybe let's address this before we get too far into this and we start clicking off some good lap times here. The exit of turn number 11. So for the USF 2000 Series Pro Mazda, Indy Lights not as much, but the Pro Mazda and the USF 2000 cars are lighter. So when they go through there, they want to dance a little bit more, which causes them to potentially get out into that wall. Now, as you said, we saw the Verizon IndyCar Series. We saw Graham nearly get into that wall, but with the bumps at the exit of that turn, the unsettling of the car, it affects the Pro Mazda USF 2000 cars more so than the others.
Not even just the weight, but the lack of downforce as well. Of course, Indy Lights has a lot more downforce, and those lighter cars, less downforce, they're going to slide around more. They just are, because the downforce isn't there. And coming through that particular part of the racetrack, after they've transitioned off the off-camber right-hand turn 10, they're coming back across the track. They're getting the thing to turn again. They're essentially trying to get the car to rotate to make sure it comes through that corner very cleanly. And when you're doing that, that's when you start getting that a little bit of mid-corner exit oversteer, and the rear end comes around. And a fast lap is when you are a couple inches away from the wall. You make a little mistake and you're in the wall.
Does the car want to skip, if you will, when it comes out of there, trying to find grip? If it hits a bump, wanting to skip out and with that understeer, get out into the wall as well?
Two things, yeah. If it's a rough area, you've got a lot of wheel into the thing, you're turning it like crazy, trying to get the thing to bite around the corner. Indeed, if the motion isn't, obviously the motion's not going down the track, the motion's going outside of the track, outside of the corner. But also, if you're out there and the minute those front tires do start to grip, that's when they bite and the rear end comes back around. That's that snap loose, snap oversteer, when you've got a lot of wheel into it, and the minute it grips, that's when the car starts to come back around on you. That's when you have to have quick hands. You want quiet hands, you want nice, slow hands. You got to slow the wheel down. But when something happens, you better be on top of it quickly.
And you think about that, and I think for a lot of people, the natural tendency is to overcorrect, to put too much input into the steering wheel. When you say quick, you don't want a lot of input, you just want quick input, and that keeps the car from unsettling itself even more when you're trying to save it.
Anytime you're really sawing at the wheel, the car's getting unbalanced. Every time you do that, it's transferring weight from front to back to side to side. The idea is to have those nice slow hands and deliberate hands. Make the corner. You're not jerking the wheel trying to get to the apex. You're picking your line. You've got your exit point. That's when you can be nice and easy with the input and allow the car to track out to the exit. Stingray Rob from Payette, Idaho. Great young man. Impressive driver through his karting career. Jumped into the Pro Mazda category last year, having run the Formula Speed 2.0 series in Sonoma, California, with the World Speed operation. Debuted last year in the final season of the old Pro Formula Mazda chassis. Has looked good here for Team Pelfrey in the number 82. He's P1 right now, 109.2471. We're early in this session, Michael. We're in that part of the session where they're on the tires that they ran in the qualifying last race. So they have made some adjustments based on what they thought the car was going to do. That's when they're going out and checking it now. They're going to probably stay out for 7, 8, maybe 8 minutes, maybe 9. Bring the car back in, make those adjustments, stick on the fresh Cooper rubber, and go out to try to qualify on the pole.
If they come in at 8 minutes, that gives them a couple of minutes to get everything changed. It's not like the IndyCar series where they have guns and they just pull the wheels right off. They have to hand crank them off. And once they get them off and get them back on, you're talking about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to get everything turned around?
To be honest, you'll watch from them coming into the pit lane and getting back out and around, it's around 4.5 to 5 minutes with that outlap as well, right? They're getting back on the track. By the time they get back around to the timing loop, you'll see 4.5 minutes.
So that will give them roughly 8 or 9 minutes left in the session, which translates into about 4 to 5 laps. When do you think that's going to, when those tires, those Coopers, those new ones, will really start to sing?
Well, and that's what we talk about. Again, even more with Indy Lights than Pro Mazda, but that's the equation that they're trying to get. They want to have open racetrack. They want the pressures to come up exactly right of the tires, and they come up with the air temperature, so the tire pressure comes up to where they want it to be. It's got to get to that tire pressure when they're at the optimum time on the tire, the optimum lap on the tire, and they want as much fuel out of the car as they possibly can. They want it light. They want to hit the fuel. They want to hit the temp number. They want to hit the pressure. They want to hit everything exactly right to optimize that on the qualifying session. All that's what it takes to qualify.
All right,
on the pole.
Mr. Strategy. Parker Thompson has parked his car, no pun intended, for the first 8 minutes of this race. He just went out. Thoughts there?
Well, you know what? We have the PR director right beside us here from Alicia Hodap. She's giving me some input that there's an issue right now for Parker Thompson on the track. They had an issue at the end of the qualifying session. They thought it might have been the engine. There was potentially something electronics. Right now, he's off the racetrack. They haven't got him out here yet. This is tough for Parker Thompson. Here's the guy who comes in here leading the points. I'd like to tell you that he was sitting on the grid waiting to put fresh rubber on, trying to hold a set of rubber, but I think there's an issue potentially for Parker Thompson right now.
Well, we're watching the screens. I'm trying to pick him up.
He's in pit lane, I think, still.
I thought I just saw him go out. That might have been, I just thought I caught him out the corner of my eye, so we'll see. That may have potentially had been his teammate, but his teammate's on pit lane as well. So Renus VK currently P1, Stingray Rob P2, David Malukas P3, Harrison Scott P4, Robert McGinnis P5. 4 of those 5 on pit lane. Renus VK, the only one currently working on track. You have an update on Parker Thompson.
I'm told he's trying to get himself back to the pit lane. I don't know where. We're trying to pick him up here somewhere, whether he's off the racetrack. But some kind of an issue for Parker Thompson.
Well, he came out of pit lane, and the engine sounded sour to me. I just saw him go out.
So, again, potential electronic issue. There's a driver who spun. Driver around coming through turn number 10. That's right in front of the pit lane. That's that off-camber right-hander. We're going to go red flag just as David Malukas comes out. I'm not sure if it's got he might have fresh rubber on.
I think he does.
That's tough. He'll try to cruise around. Actually, that may work for him. It'll scuff the tire a little bit. That may, I think, be his teammate, actually, who's gone around Chris Wright. Indeed, number 78 of Chris Wright. Tough part of the racetrack there where that, again, you're kind of going over top of the curb on the inside. It's already off camber. Trying to roll the throttle back on. Chris Wright able to get things going again. Will Parker Thompson be able to get himself back to pit lane?
Well, that's the thing. Trying to just pick him up on the circuit.
Saying he stopped. Being told he has stopped somewhere off the racetrack, whether it is in between, in the runoff in 1 and 2, or whether or not he is off in one of the runoffs, but there's an issue for Parker Thompson.
Let's figure out where Parker ended up.
Is that him right down there in turn number 3, the end of the back straightaway? Is that? We're trying to look at our particular monitor screen where, there he is over there in turn number 8. So he's off in turn number 8, the runoff of 8.
And as I said, when he came out of pit lane, that engine sounded sour. Didn't have that good tone to it, and you said a potential with electrical. So something's mechanically or electrically not working in that number 90 racing entry. So Parker Thompson.
We talked about this in USF 2000. We're going to have a couple of very fast drivers, Igor Fraga being one, Lucas Cole the other, starting at the very tail of the field. We're going to see Parker Thompson, your point leader, potentially starting 14th in race number 2 tomorrow. And they've got work to do. They got to figure this thing out. That's the major issue right now. They have an electrical issue that they weren't able to figure out from what happened in the first qualifier.
So more at Gremlin than they just changed all the plugs and all that and just said we're good to go. They can't find it.
That's what it would be right now, right?
Wow.
They tried to figure it out. You would expect that they'll have the guys from the lead engines over. They're going to rip that thing apart, put all new electrical in. They'll do whatever they can to figure it out. But, man, tough one for Parker Thompson here in the number 90 machine, the point leader out of Red Deer, Alberta, Canada, the exclusive Autosport entry.
Nearly a picture-perfect season for that young man thus far. Well, and you expect he's built himself a big enough advantage in the championship that something like this shouldn't affect him too much, but certainly you hate to see these little things that are out of your hands affect any race weekend.
One of the things that we haven't really brought up at all, and it's kind of unique right now to the Pro Mazda series, is a brand new chassis, brand new car, the PM18, brand new engine package as well. There were some minor engine issues earlier in the year. What they elected to do because of that, because there was overall engine issues, they have elected to add a drop to the championship for Pro Mazda. So every driver will be able to drop their worst finish this year for the championship. So this actually, if there is an issue for Parker Thompson here this weekend, he will be able to drop one race. So when they calculate the points at the end of the season, there will be a drop of one race at the end of the season. It's again, brand new race car, brand new engine, everything coming together. There was a couple of minor issues, and they elected, hey, you know what? We don't want an issue to happen with our spec package to affect the overall championship. Everybody will be able to drop one race.
Well, Parker Thompson calls this Toronto event his home race, even though he's from Red Deer, Alberta. Interestingly enough, Zachary Clayman DeMello also kind of claiming this race as well, who hails from Montreal, Quebec. He said in the press conference yesterday he can get from Montreal to Toronto in 4 hours. That made James Hinchcliffe's jaw drop to the ground. He said maybe 4.5 to 5. I'm understanding for normal people it's about a 5.5 6 hour drive. 4 hours.
So, well, he's a race car driver.
True.
And I'm assuming he would probably do that at around 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning when nobody was out there to care, driving whatever Ferrari.
He made it sound as if it was 2 in the afternoon. Yeah. Why wouldn't you, right? Right? Yeah,
that's the bravado of a young kid. That's what it is, right?
And I think it all started, for Parker Thompson, a 4-hour flight to my home race, it's just like fantastic. Well, we're back under green, Renus VK. Back to work the racing circuit.
So Parker Thompson not able to get the number 90 machine back to pit lane, so he will indeed qualify dead last, starting on the 7th row.
They towed him in, but...
Oh, they did tow him in. I didn't see that.
Yeah, they towed him in, but...
I missed that.
Yeah, not sure if they will be able... If you said they couldn't find what it was before the session started...
The amazing thing about these engines now, of course, Steve and Logan Knapp from Elite Engines will get over there. They'll plug it in. The data they're able to pull off the engine, they're going to find out what it was very quickly. They hopefully will be able to make some adjustments or maybe even put some extra parts in the thing. They'll go to work. I love seeing a couple of guys coming through turn 3, and you can see those Cooper Tires stickers still running around. There's a lot of guys that have bolted on fresh rubber for this final run. Michael, 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes. Expect 4 laps potentially at speed here when they get back around. This will be it. This is the run for the pole position. Pro Mazda race number 2.
I'm expecting chaos. I think I saw 6 cars go through turn number 5, 2 abreast. I don't know. We're still qualifying, I think. But you see one of the cars swinging wide down there in turn number 8. As we have a gaggle trying to put down some good laps. Again, only 4 minutes remaining in this qualifying session.
And that's the issue there. You have trouble in turn number 8 if you're trying to get a gap. You've already lost that lap. Because this next lap, you cruise across the line. You've got to be at speed coming out of turn number 8 to be able to get a new lap started at the speed you need to. Renus VK on top, 108.5247. Stingray Robb in second in the team's helper number 82. David Malukas third in the 79. Harrison Scott in the number 10, now fourth. Robert McGinnis fifth in the number 9. Oliver Askew in the 3. In 6th, Raul Guzman 7th. Carlos Cunha 8th. Andres Gutierrez 9th. And Nikita Listoshkin. They repaired that car after the issue that he had in practice. He's back on track here to see if he can't improve his starting position for race number 2.
That car doesn't seem to be handling, and obviously this is the first they've had it to get back out. If I remember right, he was in the top 5 in that session, or was he down in the middle pack?
Probably the middle of the pack, yeah, okay. lower to the top 10. They were really trying to dial the car in. But again, how much racing, how many on-track events have we had since Nikita was on track at 8 o'clock this morning? Different weather, rubber's down. It's going to take him a couple laps to get a feel for it. I think P10's pretty solid right now for him. He needs another half a second to try to jump a couple spots. We will say hello to everybody listening and watching live on roadtoindy.tv or through the IndyCar.com race control page or ProMazda.com. Maybe the IndyCar YouTube channel. Lots of opportunities to follow both the Verizon IndyCar Series and the entire Mazda Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires online from home or, from course, from your mobile device as well. Download the Road to Indy app, and you're able to follow all of our sessions on the mobile device.
Shout out to Stingray Robb. I thought that lap time might not hold as everybody got back out there to qualify. He's doing awfully well. Minute 8:65.12.
Well, look at the fast lap from Renus VK in round number 1, the opening qualifying, 107.9. He's about 0.6 of a second off. Stingray Robb only 0.4 off his best lap, so he's actually improved based on where he was before. David Malukas full second off, a 109.121. Malukas now into 3rd. Harrison Scott 4th. Robert McGinnis 5th. Again, 4 teams in the top 5.
And you had said you expected the speeds to drop off ever so slightly.
Not much, yeah. Not a ton. The weather's still pretty good. It's just a difference in the grip level, right? The guys getting comfortable with it.
Well, we will imagine things to get very busy these final 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So when I say busy, I think you're going to see some of these drivers really begin to push. Harrison Scott currently sitting P4. Stingray Robb comes to pit lane. Robert McGinnis, P5.
Yeah, I was just going to say, now the Cooper Tires starting to get into that temperature window where they're going to be good. Guys that put new rubber on, they're only going to start getting better right now. Oliver Askew, indeed, jumps up into the Fast 5. Askew rolls by us here in the Soul Red Mazda Scholarship car. Askew, the reigning USF 2000 champion, running this year as a rookie in the series. Currently P5, back by just 0.8 of a second. And Renus VK drops it down a little more. 108.3579. He goes a bit quicker, now 0.2 past his teammate, Robert McGinnis. So Juncos Racing 1-2. VK and McGinnis first and second.
The key with Rinus VK right now is that he laid down an even quicker provisional pole-sitting lap. He'll be able to get not only this lap done, but another one after that.
David Malukas out of Chicago, Illinois, swept the weekend 3 weekends ago, at Road America. So Malukas for BN Racing, the young American, goes P2 by just over 1/10 of a second in the number 79. Less than a minute remaining in qualifying.
Boy, unless Stingray Robb wore those tires out, there he comes back out. Just an odd thing to be sitting on pit lane in the final 2 minutes of qualifying.
Yeah, I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. He just came back on the racetrack with 35 seconds left.
He won't even get a lap in.
He's not even going to get one lap in. Unless they're just trying to come out maybe to scuff those tires before a race. That's all I can think. Stingray Robb currently sitting in 4th spot. Rinus VK quicker again. 108.275. Not by much, but he goes quicker. That car going in the right direction. VK is going to get this final lap as well. So Rinus VK still on a flyer. Malukas second. McGinnis third. Stingray Robb and Oliver Askew round out your top 5. Harrison Scott 6th. Gutierrez 7th. Cunha, Guzman, and Listoshkin in your top 10. Antonio Saravale from Unionville, Ontario, just up the road. 11th. Good run for him now. Needs to find some more speed, though. 2.5 back, but a good run for the 15-year-old.
Well, we had 4 cars streaking down the front straightaway. I think Andres Gutierrez did make it before that checkered flag. I think all 4 of those cars made it across the timing and scoring line, so they will indeed get this final lap.
Stingray Robb again into the pit lane, so probably just scuffed a set of tires. Oliver Askew does the same. Rinus VK, David Malukas, Robert McGinnis, checkered flag flying. This is it. Yeah.
Too wide.
They're too wide. And qualifying.
Yeah, to qualify.
Too wide coming out of turn number 3. Not the best idea. This is the final lap for these drivers, all trying to get one more lap in, but the way they're racing on the track, we're not going to get good open lap time. Only the driver up front potentially with an opportunity to leverage this lap. The rest of them out there burning up tires. They'll come through turn number 8. Final time across the line. Is David Malukas going any quicker? He does not. So no one able to move up the order. Rinus VK for Juncos Racing, back-to-back pole positions. 1 bonus point for each of those poles. Rinus trying to fight himself back into the championship hunt. David Malukas in 2nd. Robert McGinnis 3rd. Harrison Scott jumps up to 4th at the very end. His last lap good enough to go to P4 ahead of Stingray Robb. Oliver Askew, Michael in 6th position. Andres Gutierrez in 7th. Carlos Cunha 8th. Nikita Listoshkin 9th. And Raul Guzman for RP Motorsports Racing in the number 27, the Mexican, in 10th position.
Well, I will say that the USF 2000 race number 1, will be a thriller tomorrow. Race number 2 for this Pro Mazda race, Parker Thompson at the rear of the field, going to be a thriller as well.
The Canadians, of course, this place is going to be packed when they come rolling in here, and the Canadian Parker Thompson going to start in the 14th position. You buy the whole seat, you're only going to use the edge.
Boy, that's
because Parker's going to be on it.
No truer words have been spoken. Nice job, though. Rinus VK able to grab 2nd pole. David Malukas, McGinnis, Harrison Scott, Stingray Robb, and then Oliver Askew rounding out our first 3 rows. Been a heck of a day today. Any predictions for tomorrow? I think that whole buying the seat, needing the edge is going to hold true throughout the remainder of this weekend.
Well, in this particular category, you've got Rinus VK. He swept the weekend at the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, and he's trying to get himself back at the championship. David Malukas he's a little further back. He's had a couple of issues, but he won both races at Road America. And then you've got Robert McGinnis, who hasn't won yet. He won in his 2nd year in USF 2000 at St. Petersburg. Wasn't able to get another victory to the end of the year. Rookie here in Pro Mazda. You wait. McGinnis in the number 9 will be a guy to watch because he's going to be aggressive in turn number 3. That will be a good place to watch. At least one of these races. Turn 3 is going to be pretty exciting when we go green tomorrow.
We will keep our eyes on all the turns and bring you all the action again tomorrow. Our thanks to Rob Howden, the voice of this Pro Mazda series and all of the Mazda Road to Indy. Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Congratulations, Rinus VK. He will bring the Pro Mazda field down for race number 2 coming Sunday morning. We welcome you. Day number 1 of this Honda Indy Toronto. Again, a big thank you to our Ontario Honda dealers for providing this Fan Friday. Again, be sure to donate some money to Make-A-Wish, make some child's dreams come true. It's such an important cause, and with our Ontario Honda dealers bringing you this free Fan Friday, please return the favor and donate some money to Make-A-Wish Canada. Well, we have the NASCAR Pinty Series coming up next. We'll be joined by the one and only Adam Ross as we go qualifying NASCAR style here on the streets of Toronto. The NASCAR Pinty Series coming up next, qualifying at 4:05. That'll get you about 10 minutes to get yourself something to eat, drink, and enjoy the rest of the day here. And we thank you for joining us, making us a part of your weekend. It's day number 1 of the Honda Indy Toronto.